He's jumping on now.
Okay.
And Brittany Nunes is also here, Madam Mayor, for the pledge.
Thank you. All right, so with that, now that all the council members are present, we will reconvene the City of West Sacramento regular meeting for the City of West Sacramento City Council and West Sacramento Redevelopment Successor Agency and West Sacramento Financing Authority for today's March 2nd meeting. I will need a motion to reconvene.
Move by.
Okay, thank you.
Seconded.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. And I think Jeff Mitchell's waiting to get in.
Councilmember Early.
Aye.
Councilmember Akala.
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco.
Aye.
Mayor Guerrero.
Aye. All right, thank you. And we will now continue with the meeting. We will proceed with the pledge. Oh, sorry, Madam Clerk, you have, let's proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Brittany Tapia Nunez.
I apologize for the camera. It seems kind of blurry, but would you like me to do that now?
Yes, please.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Brittany is a member of the UA Local 447, the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters trade. She was given an opportunity to begin a career with Local 447 on the Natural Resources Building, and we're recognizing her role in the trades for Women's History Month. So thank you so much for joining us today. Brittany.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And may I have the city attorney provide a closed session report?
Yes, ma'am. Council met in closed session to confer with its legal counsel concerning one matter of litigation identified in the agenda and to confer with its labor negotiator concerning negotiations with the Police Officers Association. In both cases, no reportable action was taken.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, can you begin with the introduction of today's meeting?
Yes, ma'am. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes and can only be made on matters within the City of West Sacramento's jurisdiction. The council cannot take action or deliberate on items that are not on this agenda unless there is an emergency and the need to take action arose after the agenda was posted. If you would like to provide comment, please press the raise hand icon or press *9 on your telephone. Speakers will be called on in the order that their hands are raised. Please leave your hand raised until you've finished making your comment. And the first item on the agenda would be public comment on non-agenda item. Oh, you're on mute, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much. And we are meeting via Zoom since we are under an emergency order to not meet in person, and also under the recommendation by the Yolo County Public Health Officer. And you can watch the meeting live on the cable channel or via the Zoom link on the city's website. And you can also dial in with the information that is provided on the city's website to provide public comment. Next item on the agenda is item number 1, which are presentations by the public on matters not included on the agenda, and council members are prohibited from discussion on any matter presented under this item. And each member will have 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will let the person know when they have 30 seconds left to conclude their comments, and then we'll mute after the 3 minutes is up. And Madam Clerk, do we have anybody requesting to speak?
Yes, ma'am. Our first speaker this evening is Ruben Sanchez. Mr. Sanchez, would you like to provide your comment?
Mr. Sanchez, you're muted. So we did not hear you speak. Is he able to, did we lose him?
I'm not sure. I'm going to move on to the next speaker.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh,
Yes, we can
sir.
hear-
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I want to say that as far as the swimming pool building in Broderick, we need a swimming pool in West Sacramento.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Maria Grijalva. Ms. Grijalva?
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I wanted to start by saying that as we begin this city council meeting, I would like to acknowledge that we stand on stolen land that is of the Patwin Indian people, and that we should not forget that this land belongs to the Patwin people. I would like to take this moment to acknowledge these ancestral lands. It's very important to celebrate the resilience and strength of all indigenous people. And as Americans, I think that living in the here and now, that we must strive to do better and to be mindful of our actions today, especially as we deliberate on the swimming pool issue today. It's important that we keep in mind some famous words that are a symbol of commemoration, that often says that lest we forget is the saying, which means that it should not be forgotten that the swimming pool was actually taken away from the north area for political purposes, and it was not taken away from us for any other reason. And so we deserve to have a swimming pool in the north, and we should not be expected to drive out of our neighborhood to go to a swimming pool in the south area. So thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I hope that we get to have our swimming pool in the north so that we can have our sense of community, which we deserve to have, and we deserve not to have snatched away from us. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Rhonda Pope Flores. Ms. Flores?
Hello, everybody hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. I want to express some concern for, I was on your February 11th special meeting. I just want to express concern about the way that was handled. If you're going to speak about Bright Park and about the swimming pool, I would appreciate that those be placed on regular agenda items and they're clearly identified that you're going to be speaking about Bright Park. It was in a blurb in the very last sentence. It was very unclear. Many people worked during that time. So I felt that it was not being completely transparent. We have gained a ton of momentum about this pool. And I just want to go back a little bit in memory lane. You know, the pool is not optional. The pool is an obligation that is required when you guys signed that development agreement with the Rivers development. That development agreement identified a number of things that were supposed to happen. The improvements of Bright Park, an aquatic and recreational center, was supposed to take place on the corner of Todd Hunter and Perry. All of those things never happened. So, you know, I just want to make sure that you understand that under the obligations of that development agreement a long time ago, many, many years ago, this was supposed to happen and it never did. In fact, some of the money was allocated to the City Hall on West Capitol Avenue. Some of the money from that development agreement. That shouldn't have happened. So I just want to make sure that it's clear that the pool is a requirement. It was something that was supposed to happen decades ago and it never did. It needs to be considered in the Bright Park master plan. When I listened to the meeting, I was very concerned because I heard a lot about we don't have the money. How are we going to do this? No, there's money. I've looked at your budget. I've looked at your tax measures and the balances that are there, and the tax revenue that's coming in on the north side with all the new development. What is going on with that tax revenue, and why is there no money? So I don't believe that. I'm going to push even. I will be on every city council meeting, expressing the same thing. I will continue to. We are going to be having community meetings, and we'll have one. We're going to be having one this Thursday. I will continue to gather signatures, and I just want to express that this is not optional. This was a requirement, and I want to remind you of that. So
That's 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Forrest.
Hi there. Thank you guys for allowing me to speak tonight. I appreciate it. When I heard and saw some of the activity that's going on with the pool, I oppose. I've lived here in Broderick for years now, and the thing is that one, and I also want to do a shout out. I work in the natural resources building, and I want to give a nod to our union folks out there that were doing the pipe fitting union, which is kind of interesting because water carries pipe. Our water goes in the pipes, and the thing is that when we're talking about filling up this pool, the pool is going to be like 18 to 20,000 gallons of water during an epic drought that we're not going to really be able to pull out of. I mean, I can see where having a pool sounds great on paper, but if there's no water because we have a drought, it just feels like it's going to be a waste of money. And then even when let's just say we did fill the pool, well, that's going to have an evaporation rate of like 600 gallons of water per week. And when we start looking at everything drying up from this drought, now's not the right time. I mean, if we can use that money towards something else, great, like maybe towards education or some other kind of facility at Bright Park, that would be great. But I mean, like literally the Department of Water Resources, who work in the same building that I do, we're talking about wells that are drying up. There's just acres of farmland up in the Klamath River that are losing massive amounts of farmland, whether it's the trees that have been there for 30 years, and it's just drying up. So, I mean, worst case scenario is we build the pool, we fill it, and then there's no water to put it. We're gonna have an empty pool. So, I don't know. That's just my soapbox on the whole thing. Look, having a pool sounds great, but we're in a drought, so we got to scuttle it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Alfred Melbourne. Mr. Melbourne.
Great, thank you. Just wanted to say thank you to Maria for acknowledging the native folk, the Patuan of this land, and making sure that we're keeping the indigenous folk knowledge and wisdom always on the forefront. And also thank you, Rhonda, for representing and getting people together. I know that we've been underserved in this area, and getting a pool would just be the beginning of building out the north area, getting some strong representation. And I don't think that filling the pool is going to be any type of problem with the river right there next to it. I think that with today's technology and educated folks, they'll be able to work that into the process, and we can have something similar to what they have at the recreation center in Southport. So if there's money to be spent, that we need to focus on areas that have been underrepresented. There's a lot of talk going around about equity, and yet we've barely even begun to see any kind of equality when it comes to resources and educational mentoring programs out in the North area. And it really becomes a shame that we have to even be talking about North and South. It's evident to see where we need to focus our needs. And I think that's what should be done. And in closing, I just wanted to say thank you to the City Council. I've met with some of you folks recently, and I know that it's a very not a lot of thanks and doing a lot of work for basically volunteering. So thank you to you guys. I know that you guys put a lot of work in, other staff folks, city managers and whatnot. So appreciate the work you guys are doing, and we hope to move forward with these plans and coming to a good consensus to rebuild the North area and focus our attention where we need to. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Becky Olson. Ms. Olson? Ms. Olson, you're on mute.
Unmute. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to say, you know, I've long been in support of putting a pool back over on the north side. I think it's extremely important to the community and the kids and the families, especially the ones that don't have transportation and are not able to get over to the pool in Southport. So I just feel horrible for anyone that wants to swim that can't get over there quickly, or easily, I should say. And I'm supportive of the effort to build the pool and appreciate all the planning that's the city has gone through to upgrade the parks. But I also understand that at this point, the pool is the last phase. It's in the last phase of the plan. And I just really hope that the council can consider moving that up and really following through on that process, especially when it comes to partnering with the school district, because I know that it's a partnership and we can't really move forward until the school district signs off on it. And you know, if we're out there to help our kids and our community, then I just see this as a no-brainer. And so I hope that everyone can work together and make that happen. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Maria Garcia. Ms. Garcia? Ms. Garcia, you're on mute.
Oops. Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Ok. Bueno, mi nombre es María García. Tengo más de 21 años viviendo aquí en West Sacramento. Mi esposo tiene más de 45 años. Nos damos cuenta de que nuestros niños no hablan, y no hablo solo de mis hijos, sino de todos nuestros niños como comunidad. Necesitan un centro de recreación, no solo una alberca, aquí en la parte norte de West Sacramento. Por la razón de que hay más gente de bajos ingresos y nuestros niños, al no tener algo en qué ocupar su tiempo, se empiezan a meter en problemas como drogas, alcohol, cigarrillos electrónicos, etcétera. Pero lo más triste de todo es que al final todos estos niños se van a terminar yendo a las partes donde hay algo que robar, y esa sería la parte sur de West Sacramento. Ya empezamos a mirar cómo ya empiezan a pasar esas cosas. Nuestras tiendas ya empiezan a vandalizarse, y por ahora es solo el principio. Sinceramente pienso que ustedes que están en el poder pueden ayudar a la comunidad. Yo pienso que ni por el dinero, es por el bienestar de toda nuestra comunidad y todos nuestros niños de nuestra comunidad. Que Dios les dé sabiduría para tomar la mejor decisión. Es todo.
We have no additional speakers, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. Close the public comment. Next is our consent agenda, item 2 through 18. Are there any requests to remove an item for questions or presentations? I don't hear anything. I do want to take item number 18 out. I do want to just give a few comments. And with that, I just want to say, you know, to our police managers, thank you for all your work, your dedication. You know, just to greatly appreciate everything you do. You've been going through a lot, I think, this last couple of years, and just a lot of challenges. And so just wanted to give you a shout out, you know, sharing my appreciation. And with that, I'll accept the motion to support the consent. Go ahead, Chris.
Madam Mayor, I move the consent agenda to the recommended action.
I'll second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Early, Aye. Councilmember Acala?
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco?
Aye.
Mayor Guerrero?
Aye. Okay. Next, we will move to item number 19 on our time set agenda. Under the city manager's office is a public hearing to receive resident and council input on communities of interest related to the city's transition to district-based elections. John? I'm sorry, I'm gonna get up.
Good evening. The council's last meeting in February, after that meeting, we've had 2 community outreach meetings on the subject of communities of interest related to the city's transition to district elections. So the purpose of this meeting tonight is to let Redistricting Partners, our consultant, share out some of the information that we received at those meetings from the public, and to solicit even more input from the council and the public, and to give the council a preview of your next meeting when we'll have draft maps available for you to review. So with that, I will turn it over to Joe Armenta from Redistricting Partners.
Just one moment, please.
Sorry, I had to go and take care of my cough. Go ahead.
Well, good. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to the members of the public who have participated in this process. Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Joe Armenta. I am a redistricting manager here at Redistricting Partners. For those of you just getting to know us, we are a firm that helps municipalities with the redistricting process and districting process, which is what the city of West Sacramento is going through. We have a presentation tonight. This is our second public hearing on the matter. And we're going to cover a lot of the things that we covered in the first public hearing. I'm going to go through it a little bit quicker than we did the last time, but we're still going to be open for questions and feedback from the public. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. We have a presentation for you. Second. Great. And can I just get a nod if you can see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So again, the city of West Sacramento is going through the districting process. You might have heard of redistricting in the news. Redistricting is when they adjust the existing lines. Districting is when we actually create the lines that will be in use for the next decade. Things we'll cover though in this presentation is the California Voting Rights Act, just districting basics. We'll go over traditional redistricting principles, basically the rules that we play by when we're drawing these districts and deciding where the boundaries are. We'll talk about communities of interest, and we've been soliciting feedback from the public. We'll go into more about how the public can participate. We've already done 2 public workshops. We have more coming down the pipeline. And then we will also just go through kind of the roadmap from here. So the next things that we have in store. Just in a quick overview, what is the CVRA? The CVRA is the California Voting Rights Act. And basically this is a measure that takes the Federal Voting Rights Act and expands upon it. So the Federal Voting Rights Act has to deal mostly with creating minority districts so that folks have, so that protected classes have the ability to elect their candidate of choice. The California Voting Rights Act goes a step further than that, and really only requires that that racially polarized voting, I'll go into what that means in a second, exist in a jurisdiction in order to switch to a districted system. And again, I'll touch upon that in just a second of what that means. There's also a provision in the California Voting Rights Act that allows plaintiffs who bring complaints against jurisdictions to get reimbursed for legal fees and associated with successful challenges. Just overall though, what districting is the initial process of creating districts, as I was mentioning earlier. These boundaries that we are going to create though determine the eligibility to run for office. So only people that live within a district can seek office for that district. But additionally, only people who live in that area, this new district that we're creating, can vote for those candidates for office. Right now, the city of Sacramento elects all the council members citywide. This one will create defined boundaries where that districts are made up of. And again, this will dictate who runs in those districts and who's allowed to vote. And then, as I talked about earlier, again, redistricting is, when we talk about redistricting, this is just adjusting the existing line. This process is done after the census is completed every 10 years. And then the district lines are adjusted to meet, to adjust for population corrections. Again, so basically we're creating the district right now. And then after the next census, you will go through a redistricting cycle. One thing that we do note, though, in this is that the districts need to be relatively equal size. So again, that's when you're redistricting, you're rebalancing the population to create relatively equal districts. But again, districting is actually creating the districts, and that's what we're doing here in the city of West Sacramento. Some of the principles, and again, these are really the rules that we're playing by here when we're drawing these districts, is that the districts need to be relatively equal size. So basically, we can't create districts that are, one district only has 10 people in it, another district has 100 people in it. The district that has 10 people in it, folks would have a greater say in their ability to elect a person than a person who lives in the district with 100 people in it, because they'd be fighting with 99 other people, right? And so the districts need to be relatively equal size. There's a little wiggle room that we have. But again, we're really shooting for equal size within a 10% range. The districts also need to be contiguous, so they all need to be attached. Every part of the district needs to be attached to each other somehow. They need to maintain communities of interest. We'll go into what that is in a second. They need to follow county, city, local lines, neighborhoods, things like that. We try not to split them in districts and when we're creating districts, just so residents of that area can have a common voice when advocating for policies that impact them. And then the districts need to be compact. And basically, we can't draw squiggly lines all over the place. We are trying to keep these districts as close together as possible. What we are going to talk about, though, is communities of interest. And this is what we've been working with the city staff and what we've been providing workshops to the public to engage with, is really to tell us about what their communities of interest are. And basically what a communities of interest is kind of the building blocks of a district. This tells us basically where to start and where to stop. And it's letting us know where people live and what brings those people together, and how we should kind of shape the lines around those communities. These districts, though, are, they can include ethnic and language groups out there, and we've received testimony about Spanish speakers in the northern part of the city. But it's really, it is subjective and it is open-ended. It's kind of designed to be as inclusive as possible, so we can take in as many voices as we can and accommodate that for deciding where these boundaries are. There are certain communities, though, covered by the Federal Voting Rights Act. These are protected communities, and there are Latinos, Asians, African Americans. If there's specific criteria that come into play, then we need to take those into consideration in order to abide by the Federal Voting Rights Act. But with that said, race can't be the predominant factor when we're deciding to draw these districts, unless it relates to the Federal Voting Rights Act. So, we can't just say the only reason we want to draw a district this way is to make it, 5% more Latino or, 10% more white. That would be using race as a predominant factor. But, unless it relates to the Federal Voting Rights Act, which is, again, creating majority minority districts in order to be compliant with federal law. However, again, we can take into consideration things like language services or their cultural characteristics like churches and things like that. Those are things that we can look out for. But just race by itself can't be the predominant factor for drawing these. Some other things, I won't read all of these, but again, religious facilities, neighborhoods, economic opportunity zones, outdoor recreation areas, homeowners and renters, kind of that distinction. If that's, if there's a part where it has a lot of homeowners and a lot of renters, we can take into that consideration. Tourism areas and school districts, all things that are labeled as communities of interest. There's many more things. It just needs to be also, though, tied to a geography. Right? An example I like to use is sometimes people approach us and say, hey, take seniors into consideration when drawing these maps. And the issue with that is that seniors exist all over the city, right? But if you come to us and say, well, hey, this neighborhood has a lot of senior citizens living in it. It also has assisted living facilities. It also where the residents of those assisted living facilities rely on transportation from the city, that helps us out a lot more because we can actually, accommodate that geography when we're drawing these districts. At the end of the day, this is a map, right? And so we have to make decisions based on the geography out there. Some things that are not communities of interest as defined by the Fair Maps Act is one, political party affiliation. So we cannot draw districts to favor or disadvantage a political party, incumbency, and then also potential political candidates, right? We're not drawing districts to meet the politician, we're drawing districts to that best represent the people of West Sacramento. And then again, we're really trying to bring similar-minded people who share a geographic location together. So again, both the geography and the type of people are both really important. Some things to think about when we're talking about communities of interest. Does your community have a shared culture and characteristic? What is it that bounds your community together? The people that you are advocating for? Is the community geographic in nature? Again, I touched upon that. The geography is very important in all this. And then how does the community, what is the community's relationship to city services, right? At the end of the day, we are drawing these districts for the city of West Sacramento. We're not drawing this for Congress or for state assembly. So how do your issues relate to the city? These are all things that we take into consideration when we're drawing the district boundaries. So with that said, we have several resources available for folks to provide us with information. One of which is a community of interest form. It's a simple, just piece of paper that gets you to think about what a community of interest is. It allows you to write to us and tell us about your community. We know that not everybody can attend a meeting, or even if they attend the meeting, sometimes they don't want to come up and speak. They can leave some input for us on a form, and we can take that into consideration when we're drawing these maps. Another tool that we have available is some mapping tools. So one is a placemat, what we call a placemat, but basically it's a big piece of paper, and then it has the city of West Sacramento's boundaries on it, and then it's broken up into little pieces, and every piece has the population in it. Again, we need these districts to be roughly equal size, and what members of the public can do is they can actually draw and trace around the line, the little blocks that we have set up, add up the number in it, and actually create districts and let us know that way how they feel the city should be broken into districts. And then I'm trying to just look at this. Yeah, and then also though we have a online tool available called District R. This is soon to be released. We're hoping to have it up in the next couple of days. There's been a delay in getting the data to all agree with each other. But basically District R is a mapping website where you can actually just select the city of West Sacramento, draw districts, draw your communities, and it'll let us know what you think of how the districts, again, what the district line should look like. We have provided during our workshops, we have a section for just explaining how District R works. And then in our future meetings, we'll be able to assist folks if they want to draw a district, create a plan. If they just want to tell us what their community looks like, we will have this district R available for them. And then again, so what we will do throughout really the next week until the next public hearing that we have is taking in this community of interest testimony that we're receiving both at our workshop and that's coming into the city. And we will, all this input kind of drives the process, and we will create draft maps based on what we hear. We will present these draft maps to the council, and then the council will decide and give us input on how these lines should be drawn. But also after the draft maps are available, we have public workshops where the public can come in and give us feedback on the maps. They can also, again, at this point, draw their own map, present it at a workshop, send it into the city clerk's office, and we can present those to the council. We've had many jurisdictions where we present a map and actually some member of the public comes in and brings a map forward to the city council, and the city council likes that plan and builds off of it or just flat out adopts it. That is not unusual at all, right? And so again, we're making these tools available to the public so that they can participate in the process. And then we will seek feedback throughout this entire, from the time we receive, we've already received feedback, but when we release draft map, we will have more opportunities for the public to come in and tell us give us their input. And then I just wanted to review some of the things. It's not a totally extensive list, but highlight some of the things that have come up in our community workshops that we've held so far. So in the February 19th one, we had a couple of speakers present to us. One was both members talked about the northern part of the city, kind of the Broderick neighborhoods, really talking about the things that bond that area are our struggles with food deserts, are the feeling of being underrepresented, and the need for similar social services. They provided us with some streets and also recommended that we use kind of the rail lines as dividing points between the districts, but really stressed the importance of needing a northern district to have a voice in the process. At our next community workshop hearing, we heard from a few more members of the public. Again, there was more testimony about kind of the northern area of the city. One member testified, though, about the central part of the city, specifically the Stonegate neighborhood. They felt that this area was split in the school board redistricting process, and they wanted us to keep that neighborhood whole as we are drawing these districts. Another member testified about the historic discrimination that they felt in the northern part of the city. And then another member testified about empowering marginalized communities and especially low propensity voters. So these are all things that we're going to take into consideration when we're drawing these maps. Again, we are still soliciting this feedback. So we have some forms on our website. If the public would like to continue to submit this, please do, and we will take all of it into consideration when we're drawing the draft map and presenting them to the city council. With that, though, we've been working with the city staff, and they've been excellent in getting the word out about this as well. The city staff has put out press releases. They've done social media posts and actually included all of our meetings in the utility bills that go out, so people are aware of that when they open their utility bills. They've distributed flyers, and there's actually roadside signs out in the city, which is always fun to have, that alert people of the redistricting process and when we're having our meetings. They partnered with organizations like the Chamber of Commerce and the local school district. We gave a workshop to the public library too, which is where we're going to be distributing a lot of our resources, and we let the librarians know, how they can coach people through this process. And again, we're having these community outreach hearings. We've had 2 of them so far. We will have 2 additional workshops where we will be able to engage with the public and teach folks about the process. And then these meetings, the past 2, one was translated into Russian because there is a big Russian-speaking community in the city of West Sacramento, and we had another one that was translated in Spanish. because there is a big Spanish-speaking population. We will continue to look at these translation services, and we're also translating all the materials that we produce to the public into these languages, including our PowerPoint presentations. You can kind of see them up on the screen right now, translated. And then also, there is a website available. It's maintained by the city. I think the next slide is about it. Yeah. And this is a requirement to be up for the next 10 years. So this presentation will be part of that. Over the next 10 years, it will be on the city of West Sacramento's website, but it's also just a central hub where people can come and get materials about redistricting, but also just learn when our next activities are coming up. And then speaking of our next activities, so this again counts as our second public hearing of 5. We have the draft map presentation, which will happen at our next hearing on March 16th. We will again have 2 post-map workshops. I believe these ones are in person too, and they will, if I remember, I might be speaking wrong here, but I think they will be hybrid, but both online and in person. But we will have hopefully an in-person option. And then on April 20th, we will have our next draft map hearing. We could present you with revised draft maps based on the community feedback and the feedback from you all that we received. And then we're hoping to have a final vote on May 18th for the final approval of the map. The maps, by the way, I should mention, will be published online in a few of these meetings, so the public will be able to see the map and provide feedback during the hearings. So with that, that is all I have for this one. Happy to take questions from the council, and the mayor, and yeah, help out as much as I can.
All right, thank you, Joe. Checking around among the council members if they have any questions before public comment. All right, open it up for public comment. At this time, Madam Clerk, any requests to speak?
Anybody would like to provide comment on this item, please raise your hand at this time. Ms. Grijalva has requested to speak. One moment, please. Ms. Grijalva?
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. I just want to be clear, and for the record, since this is going to be memorialized permanently, that I'm the person putting this forward, and that this was put forward back in 2018, and that this could have been taken care of for $30,000 back in 2018, and that the public does need to know that right now in court, we're trying, this is being settled for $190,000, and it didn't have to get that far, and the public needs to know that, and that the city attorney and the public needs to know that would be Jeffrey Mitchell is the person that that we've gotten this far, and that's not good. And so, and as far as the timeline, that I wouldn't count on us getting to this May 18th, because as far as the courts, that's not the timeline that we have, from what I understand. And as far as for our demographer, I think it's very important that you try to figure out how you're going to work with the population that you're working with, because we have a very unique circumstance, because as you've heard, we have the swimming pool issue that was taken away from us for the purpose of gentrification. It was taken away for no other purpose. And if you look at the statistics, our voting age population actually dropped. And that was part of the gentrification that was being done. And it actually worked. Our voting age population dropped. And let me see what else. So I understand that race cannot be the only factor, but it can be one of the factors. And so, as we've said, we have a very large Latino culture population in the north, and the what you call a simple community of interest form may be simple, but it's something that we simply don't use. And so we may use texting, but forms, we don't have a propensity to use forms. That's a foreign object to us. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Alfred Melbourne. Mr. Melbourne?
Yes, I'm thankful that we're kind of going through this process and have this opportunity to redistrict the district city council, so that we're at like kind of a precipice for our community where just touching on what Maria just said, the propensity for forums, and the system is still new to us, and a system that hasn't been working for us. And I think that's evident. The fact that we're describing communities of interest, it's unfortunate to say that Broderick and Bright has always been a community of interest, being that, once the city was built out, there wasn't a lot left for people recreation wise. And I think now we're realizing that we need to have opportunity, open spaces, greening spaces, urban farms to be able to grow food. And the whole issue of the pool is more than just the pool. I think that's just like been the one rallying cry that people can get behind, that can realize something was wrong and we need to right this. So, this gives us all an opportunity. We hope that, through these workshops and informational sessions, that we're able to come up with a plan that's going to suit all areas, and that West Sacramento as a whole can be working together, that we don't have this distinction of north and south, but one city that sets a model for other cities to follow. We always say, West Sac is the best Sac, and not to be hating on, Sacramento and whatnot, but, we have a different way of doing things. So just want to say thankful for this process, and hope that, the input of the all areas are considered, and that it's a fair process. Thank you.
Next speaker is Rhonda Pope Flores.
Hello, I just wanted to echo Maria and Alfred's comments, and I just wanted to emphasize the importance of making sure that I hate to do the whole north-south thing, but I grew up on the north side, and I did see the inequalities. And when the city did become, the city of West Sacramento, all of us on the north side always felt left out. And I know that I speak for a lot of people. Many of us felt that way. So during the, in this process, I look forward to seeing, some planning that really addresses all the areas of West Sacramento, but has a formula that is equitable for both sides of West Sacramento. The north side's been neglected for far too long. There are many needs. You drive down Cagle, and it's embarrassing. The lines on the crosswalks are faded. You can just see the neglect. So I look forward to seeing this process and the representation that is needed for West Sacramento. Thank you.
Next speaker is Maria Garcia. Ms. Garcia.
Sí, gracias otra vez por la oportunidad de hablar. Pues sí, yo les hago eco también a Rhonda, Alfred y a María Grijalva de lo mismo que están hablando. Sí, lo que viene siendo nuestra comunidad latina está más hacia el norte de West Sacramento, pero es lo mismo que ellos dicen, exactamente, pienso lo mismo que ellos. Necesitamos también lo que son banquetas en las áreas de lo que es el norte de West Sacramento también. no tenemos suficientes y necesitamos que sean iguales, igualdad para toda la comunidad. Gracias.
We have no other requests to speak, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll close the public comment, bring it back to council, and ask among the council members if you have questions, feedback, thoughts, comments.
No, just thank you to Joe for sort of the overview of kind of where we are. And I know there's much more to come. So I just thank you for taking the time and giving us, keeping us up to speed on the process.
Mayor, I also want to say thank you. I was actually at both meetings and it was good to hear the community's concerns and a lot of the feedback they gave. I think it's going to be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. I know, also just want to add, my thank you. Been a lot of work. Paul's also pitching in. I appreciate the Zoom link on the Facebook page. That made it easy just to click in. So, I know not everybody is looking at social media, but if I do have a question, is there going to be one in-person meeting by any chance?
Yeah, both of the next 2 meetings in March are in person at the community center.
Okay. All right, thank you. I just appreciate the feedback people are. And is there any written comments being provided by any chance?
The council was emailed written comments on this item.
Oh, I'm talking about is anybody submitting any written comments to John or Joe?
My apologies.
It's okay.
I don't believe so yet. We're working on putting out a lot of materials that are encouraging people to do that. And it's likely that we'll get more of that after the maps are available. That's typically when people become more energized about the process.
Okay. There was one person who actually mentioned he was going to submit something in writing, Matt Hargrove, and I was just curious to see what his maps look like. That was his. He was going to recommend a map.
Yeah.
And I was.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. He has created that map, and we've shared that with redistricting partners, so that's available to them actually in GIS form. So that's available to be considered, and we can make that available online on the website too for folks to look at.
Yeah, that would be good. I think it'd be good for folks to see what he's done. He's got a lot of experience in this, so not that one person decided all, but let people see how that works. Go ahead. Somebody else want to speak?
I think I have the PDF version of the map. I'm happy to just show the council really quickly that, or I can.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And again, there's a GIS one that's a lot more cleaned up than this one, but this was kind of his initial stab at it. So again, what Matt has been doing is trying to map out the neighborhoods and just get a common understanding of how people describe their areas. And I'm happy to send this to the council, but I think he went around just asking folks, how would you describe where you live? And so you have some established neighborhoods like Broderick and Bright, obviously. But then, some areas like there's like next to IKEA, which is kind of a fun one. But these help us kind of map out and begin determining kind of where the neighborhoods start and where they stop. And again, I'm happy to provide this in actual provide this to the council and to the mayor, so you can mull over it. But
thank you. Yeah, no, he's right. That's exactly how it works. There's like nothing in the port area, IKEA area. He marked out the locations where people live. And,
yes. There's a fun one too called the Beer and Tacos District, which I believe is next to a bunch of breweries and taco stands. So that's other fun ones of how people describe their areas.
That's funny. Okay. Very good. Thank you. All right. No other comments. We'll wrap this up and look forward to seeing you back with additional information.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Next under our time set agenda is item 20 under the community development public hearing and first reading of ordinances 22-9, 22-10, 22-11, 22-12, 22-13, and 22-14 regarding proposed development agreements with Dash Industries, LLC pertaining to commercial indoor cannabis cultivation and wholesale cannabis logistics, distribution and transportation facility at 2424 Del Monte Street. And I think it's Mr. Seamus Lappy who'll be our associate planner in the community development department that'll be presenting this, right?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and members of council. This item before you tonight would allow for indoor cannabis cultivation and distribution at 2424 Del Monte Street. This property is zoned light industrial and surrounded by existing industrial uses and is right down the street from another cannabis project the council approved a few months ago on Front Street. This item is largely similar to past cannabis projects that have come before the council, although this one is a lot larger at 125,000 square feet, most of which is for indoor cultivation. As mentioned in the staff report, a cannabis project at this location was previously approved back in 2018. The prior cannabis project or prior cannabis business only built out a small portion of that entire site, and most of the existing building has remained vacant the last few years. The city's zoning code requires cannabis projects to utilize odor control devices such that no cannabis odor can be detected outside of the building. And the applicant will also need to get a detailed safety and security plan approved by the police department prior to operation. The development agreements before you tonight are identical to the other development agreements that have come before the city council, and the terms are the same as the most recently approved cannabis project at 2505 Front Street. Staff recommends the council approve the recommended action, including finding that the project is within the scope of the general plan EIR and that no new or substantially more adverse impacts would occur through implementation of the proposed project, as shown in the analysis of the technical memo provided as an attachment to the agenda report. This concludes my report. I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lackey. Bring it back to council. Any questions before I open it up for public comment? No? Okay, I'll open it up for public comment. Any request to speak, Madam Clerk?
Anybody would like to provide public comment on this item, please raise your hand at this time. I see no hands raised, Madam Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll close the public comment, bring it back to council. Any questions? I do have one quick question. To our police chief, you know, there, as far as safety issues, are there any lessons learned from recent incidents in our distribution facilities that give us some guidance on how to enhance safety of these facilities?
Yeah, I think lessons learned locally, but also from the utilization of the consultants that are involved in helping us as a city move forward thoughtfully in this space. And so I think, yeah, there are some lessons learned, and really the utilization of the conditional use permits and some of the things that we're even contemplating going forward, I think will allow the city to leverage making certain that the right security measures are not only in place at the beginning, but also maintained at the proper level and even modified along the course of the existence of these businesses. So yeah, I do believe we're learning as we go, but we also have the benefit of many others that have gone before us at this point.
All right, thank you. That's very helpful to know. I appreciate that. All right, I'll accept a motion to approve this item. There is no other comments or questions.
Madam Mayor, I'll move the recommended action.
Second.
All right, Krista Desma moved. Councilmember Early seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Early. Aye. Councilmember Akala.
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco.
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero.
Aye. All right, thank you. This item is approved. Next, under our regular agenda is item 21. Under the City Manager's Office is consideration of amended and restated employment agreement for the City Manager and adoption of Resolution 22-27, approving related budget adjustments. And we have Amanda Berlin, our Assistant City Manager, doing the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Per the municipal code, the city manager is a position appointed by the council and subject to an employment agreement, which is renegotiated from time to time. The amended and restated employment agreement before you tonight includes changes to the existing city manager agreement, culminating from the performance evaluation of Mr. Laurel, completed by the council in closed session in February. Due to this item containing salary changes for a local agency executive, the Brown Act requires an oral report summarizing the recommended compensation changes prior to the council taking final action on the item. For this agreement, the recommended salary and benefit change takes the supplemental compensation of $4,000 per month Mr. Laurel has been receiving since March 2020 under the existing contract in recognition of his role as the Director of Emergency Services during the COVID-19 emergency, and incorporates that into his permanent base salary retroactive to March 2020. This results in a base salary that is equivalent to Mr. Laurel's current combined total annual salary of $168,500. As noted in the budget section of the report, there is a minimal impact of this change to the city and Mr. Laurel related to the associated CalPERS and 401A contributions. The agreement also includes an amendment to Section 3B regarding severance, which has no budget impact. The recommended action is to approve the amended and restated city manager employment agreement, adopt resolution 22-27, approving related budget adjustments, and approve the amended and updated classification plan for city manager for fiscal year 21-22. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Berlin. And I'll open it up for comments or questions among the council members. All right, if there is none, I'll open it up for public comment. Are there any requests to speak, Madam Clerk?
If anyone would like to provide a comment on this item, please raise your hand at this time. I see no hands raised, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'll close the public comment and bring it back to council. If there are no other comments, I'll accept the motion.
So moved.
All right.
Seconded.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Orozco moved and Councilmember Ledesma second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Early. Aye. Councilmember Akala.
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco.
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero.
Aye. All right, this item is approved. Next is agenda item number 22 under, somebody speaking? Okay, sorry. Economic Development and Housing Consideration of Revising Facility Financing Strategies for the city's impact fee program in urban infill areas. I see Miss Yancy. Are you going to be presenting on this one?
I am. I have that honor this evening to do that. So thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I want to assure you that tonight my remarks will not be a rehashing of your novel staff report, and nor will I be presenting a PowerPoint presentations with lots of colorful graphs that have little tiny writing that are almost impossible to read. Into my remarks, I want to have an opportunity to just sort of have a conversation, a discussion about this work that staff has been doing. And we're so incredibly proud to present to you this evening in the 6 recommendations. So first things I want to say is that what's in front of you tonight, I don't want you to dismiss as some kind of development assistance or incentive program or subsidy to developers in the Washington and the Central Business District. It is much larger than that. And most of my comments this evening, my remarks are going to reflect on that and hope to present to you really what we consider to be the big decision in front of the council this evening as you're considering these 6 recommended actions. So the first thing that I want to do for the people at home who maybe didn't have a chance to read this staff report or really understand much about how what development impact fees are and how they're used to fund improvements in the city of West Sacramento, the first thing that I wanted to say is that development impact fees are used and collected exclusively to mitigate the impacts of growth. So they are not used for O&M. They're not used to replace facilities that once existed and no longer do. They are simply just there to pay for new infrastructure improvements to mitigate the impacts of growth, and they are only paid by those projects, those residential or commercial projects, industrial projects that are triggering those impacts. So that's sort of the first thing that I wanted to say. The other thing that I wanted to say is that the things I'm going to be talking to you about tonight, which are really about the feasibility of the city's impact fee program and sort of the tangibility of the city's impact fee program, they're not requirements of the legislation. we consider these to be best practices that we want to bring to your attention, but you are not obligated under the legislation to do this. You are only obligated when you create an impact fee to establish nexus. And that nexus is, I have this development, it's triggering this impact, I'm able to articulate the nexus, and I'm able to articulate what the fair share would be to pay for those improvements. When I talk about feasibility, applying that feasibility lens, or I talk about taking a tangibility or actionable approach to using our impact fees and how they're collected and what they're used for, you're not obligated under the law to do that. Again, it's just a best practice. So what I want to say to you this evening is that what these 6 actions really represent to this council, if you would approve them, are a cultural and philosophical shift to how impact fees are collected and established in the city. What they really mean is that when we look at how these impact fees are created, we go above and beyond what the legislation requires of us, and we introduce 2 new best practices. One of these best practices is feasibility. We're looking at how feasible are the collective burdens of these impact fees on the projects. Are they becoming a regulatory barrier, either individually or, more importantly, when they're looked at collectively, when you take the sum total of all of the impact fees that the city collects on a single project? Have we, as the result of that combined burden, made the project infeasible? We have looked at feasibility before in the past. In the Bridge District, in 2010, we amended some of our impact fees to take this feasibility into consideration, and we pulled the Bridge District out of the city's impact fee program so that we could apply this feasibility lens. So this is not a new concept for this city. Additionally, this idea of tangibility is born in the thought that you don't have to use the general plan horizon or the general plan's maximum build out as the basis for your capital facilities planning. As long as you stay consistent with it, you don't have to look out at what you need to build in 20 years. You can look at building something in a shorter horizon, like a 10-year horizon, where your crystal ball might work just a little bit better than it does in the 20-year horizon. And you might say, this is what I expect to happen in the next 5 years, versus the general plan operates at a much higher level. And it says, this is the maximum that we would ever anticipate would be coming through the city. And so when we're talking about that tangibility, we're talking about introducing some additional precision. And we're talking about moving away from using the general plan, which is this high level planning document, and moving into more real-time data point, more phasing, more scalability, so that we are using similar data points that our investors in our community, whether they're commercial owners or they are new residential project developers, they're looking at a shorter horizon for their profit. And we would be talking about, again, scaling down our impact fee programs to have that similar kind of lens that those that are going to be paying into our impact fee program will have as they're making their investment decision. So this has been done already once before too for the city. When we look at the 2018 Parks, Trails, and Open Space Master Plan, it took this same approach. It did a 10-year CIP. It went out and did a survey of what were the improvements that needed to be done. And then it did a comprehensive financing strategy that really looked at what is the city's capacity in terms of staff to build new capital facility projects for the parks program, and what is the capacity of funding. So we get again to that more precise information than just sort of saying, what's the outside horizon, what's the maximum development, and we focus again more on what's closer to in time frame and more tangible in terms of costs and capacity issues. So those are things I want to talk to you about tonight, because the recommendations that you have in front of you are talking about shifting the city's overall impact fee program to include feasibility, to include this tangibility, and to take what we did in the Bridge District and take what we did for the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Master Plan and push them out to the citywide impact fee program. Now, in the staff report and in the EPS report, there was a lot of analysis about feasibility, and we feel like we have accurately targeted what the appropriate reductions are to achieve feasibility in the Central Business District and in Washington. We got proof with the EPS study that those same feasibility metrics, that same lens that we applied in the Bridge District, are working, that we are competitive in the subregion for the Bridge District, both for commercial and residential, and that we got it right. So we want to take that same feasibility lens and apply it to Washington and the Central Business District for residential and for commercial. And what that would mean is that we would sort of take that collective approach, what is the collective burden, and we would apply this feasibility. We are not coming to you tonight to propose exactly how we would get that done, just to share with you exactly what those targets would be, why those targets exist, and what approving these recommendations would signal to the community and to staff about the direction that this council is going in terms of its philosophy towards its development impact fee program. So in conclusion, I guess what I would say to the council is that we're asking you to decide where you want to tether staff's work. You know, I did a little research before I did this presentation. And so the horizon, when you stand as a person of my height, roughly, the horizon's about 3.1 miles in the future, out in front of me, right? I can get to the horizon, right? If I see something in the horizon, I can just point myself due east or whatever direction I need to go, and I can get myself there. There's nothing wrong with that philosophy. And that is the philosophy that we have been taking since the early aughts with our impact fee programs. There's the horizon. Here's what I need to the distance that I need to cover to go get it. And let's just, you know, march in that direction to make it happen. But if you decide to approve the recommendation tonight, and I hope that you do, because that's what staff is here, you know, advocating for, is you would be saying to staff, we recognize that this feasibility lens is so important. And we recognize that this tangibility approach, this phased, scalable approach, allows us to still get to the horizon, but we do it a mile at a time. And we stop and we reassess along the way. And we make sure that we have the rations that we need. And we make sure that we are checking the direction that we're going in, so we're not getting lost. So that's what's in front of you this evening, is asking if you are prepared and ready to take that philosophical shift that you already started doing with the Bridge District and with the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Master Plan. And will you take the evidence that's been presented to you this evening in the staff report as the result of a 2-year effort with EPS to appropriately calculate what those feasibility targets should be? And will you approve the 6 recommendations to this evening, 2 of which set us in the direction to do a full-scale overhaul of the city's development impact fee program, and the remaining 4 would allow us to implement a temporary reduction program in line with those targets that would give us the breathing room in the space and additional real-world evidence to show how we should be approaching the city's development impact fee program. That I would like to conclude my remarks. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the staff report or any of the remarks that I made. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Bring it back to council for any questions, comments, feedback.
I don't actually have any questions. I just got to say, I've never heard anyone so excited about impact fees and that energetic presentation. Thank you so much, Katie.
My pleasure always.
Councilmember Early.
Yeah, I think I'm really new to all of this, and so I appreciate the enthusiasm. But I think what I was hoping for and looking for was a translation.
That's what I was trying to do, but I'm happy to translate in a different means. Do you know what I mean? I was trying to keep it at the policy level.
Man, and you kept it there. So I think what for me, could you like boil it down, maybe just like your 30-second elevator pitch of this is what we're voting for, right? Like I'm reading through it, I'm trying to figure out exactly what are you needing from me when you say you got the 6 points.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so what we're asking for you tonight is to the council has previously before decided to do impact fees differently with this feasibility and this sort of like boots on the ground kind of approach. We went and collected some evidence that suggests that those approaches, those lens, those philosophical mindset, that is actually the best practice. So the best practice is not to do it the way that we have been doing it. It's legal. It's not illegal in any way. But in order for us to continue to grow as a city, in order for us to continue to provide good customer service to our developers, and frankly, in order for us to mature as a city in terms of the way that we're going about planning for our capital facilities programs, and we're managing our finances, and we're trying to do as much as we can with the precious dollars that we have, we need a different approach. So my elevator pitch to you is that we've done the research, we've collected the evidence. We're asking for you to run a real world experiment so we can collect more evidence so that we can prove that these best practices are exactly what the city needs to take itself into the future.
So just to make sure, because I want to make sure I have an understanding of what I'm voting for here. And my general impression of what we were proposing here, the pitch, the innovation, is that it costs more to build in older parts of West Sacramento, including Washington District. Yes?
So yeah, infill development is more challenging because instead of greenfield development where you're just putting in new infrastructure, a lot of times in infill areas, you're taking out old infrastructure, you're trying to reuse some existing infrastructure, and they're putting new in. So oftentimes you have lots of extra expenses.
It costs more money.
Costs more money.
Okay, perfect. And so what we are proposing here is that we because a lot of what we even heard right on this call today from public comment is that as we continue to build out and the investment that needs to happen, we want to make it easier for folks to invest in essentially older parts or, again, to your point, infill areas of West Sacramento, so that don't just have development in our south side, but you also have equitable investment and affordable investment on our north side.
Yeah,
so
and
far, so good?
Yeah, that's right. And there are countless other reasons why we have policies in place to invest in our infill areas. Climate change goals, equity goals. There's a wide variety of goals that we articulate in those specific plan and higher level planning documents that are for those specific geographies that we are asking for this reduction for.
Perfect. And so what we would be saying here is we want to make it affordable, more affordable. And what we're pitching here are more reasonable fees, lower fees that take into account the fact that it's more difficult to invest and build out in the north. And we're starting with the Washington District.
Yeah, that's so the recommendations 3 through 6 are really focused on that particular issue, but
okay.
they don't live in isolation because it is not. Yeah, it is not about just reducing the impact fees. It is understanding that the impact fees are infeasible and they are becoming a regulatory barrier to development. And in order to overcome that, it's not just about discounting them. It's about applying new best practices that modernize our way of doing it. There's nothing wrong with the way that we're doing it, but it maybe is not as grounded as it could be.
So when you say that you would be discounting the impact or not discounting, that you would be developing a model that takes into account the feasibility, the affordability, that is the innovation here. It's not just simply a discounted rate.
That's right.
You are going to design a new model that takes all of these factors into account.
We have. That was the research that we did with EPS, was we identified targets for specific prototypes of specific land uses, like it's a single family townhouse or it's multifamily or it's high density multifamily. We know what the targets are necessary for us to achieve feasibility.
So you have a model, because what I heard from you was we don't have an exact number yet for you. That's what I heard.
Yes. So I may be clear. The exact number that we have is in your staff report, and it's part of the recommendations. There's a table that's included that says these are the targets that we need to get to. What I meant was we don't know what impact fees we're reducing. We don't know if it's going to be straight across the board. We don't know if that we're going to go in and say most of the hit is going to come out of the traffic impact fee fund. We haven't done that analysis. That analysis requires Roberta and Andrea being more heavily involved, as they are the administrators of those programs. And there are a lot of variables that you were hinting around to that need to be taken into consideration when we decide which impact fee fund takes the reduction into account. It could be across the board, or it could come out of one or two impact fees. We will have to come back to you and ask for your input on where those reductions will occur. Right now, we're just saying, do you agree with the targets that we've identified? Do you agree with the methodology that we're applying? And do you agree with the goal?
Thank you. I appreciate your patience with that. Thank you.
Anytime, always.
Councilmember Ledesma?
I really wish I was inquisitive and well-spoken as Dante when I first got on the council 12 years ago, because it took me a while to put right when I ran almost 20 years ago, first time, because you summed it up quickly around sort of the for everybody kind of stepping into this paradigm, right, which we're trying to address, Katie, which is around what? Oh, sorry. sorry, what we're trying to do from a housing perspective, from a the build out perspective, to what we traditionally approach impact fees, right? So, and I was thinking to myself, you might want to recount how we did it, because when I started in this business, whatever amount, and it's still stuck in my brain, Katie, so I have to unwind it a little bit, right? It is around the impact fees we calculated. And I remember builders in the 2000s, before the recession, when I first ran for an office, they were asking, your fees are too high, your fees are too high. And, it was a constant ask. And what I came to learn was, yeah, that's the cost of what we need in the city, right? Because we don't through all the general planning, through everything else we do, we've calculated the cost, based on the impact fees, one set of fees around the entire city. And I remember specifically talking to business folks who I was not going to compromise on that, because the city deserves everything that is articulated in the general plan. So I'm unwinding my own brain around sort of how you're trying to get to the nexus fees, that we can still continue on the path toward the right kind of growth. So I'm agreeable to this. First of all, I'm gonna start with that, right? You did an extraordinary amount of work, and you and staff have been working on this for a couple of years, and we've intended to do this for a while, because what I start with is, what are we trying to get to, which is what you articulated to my colleague, Councilmember Early West, was around, like, this is about getting folks to build housing in an area that's very difficult to build in, right? So everybody looks at the Bridge District and they see, the wide open space. There's nothing, there's relatively new infrastructure in the Bridge District, and that was largely thanks to public money from the Prop 1C grants back in the 2010 era, right? Katie, help me on track here.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So it's easier even there to a degree, right? It's still expensive because you got a lot of different challenges. But you get to the Washington neighborhood and parts of Broderick where there's open lots, and you think about all these things that people could subdivide and they could create new housing. And I really want to emphasize this, because I think folks misconstrue what we're doing here, right? This is about the ability for, as housing gets more expensive, as housing is just not there, right? And then the third concept I want my colleagues and the public to understand, all the growth in Yolo County is happening in that exact area, right? That's where we are projecting, that's where we are held accountable. When you hear the state articulate how they want to hold cities accountable for the build out, we have planned for it all. It's all there. Am I right, Katie? I mean, we've invested, we have infrastructure. The problem is we can't, it's harder. I've talked to a developer in the last few years, a prominent developer, who was eyeballing an empty lot in the Washington neighborhood and has said, you guys have a fee problem. I want to build there. You guys have a fee problem. You guys know it, which is a good thing. Tell me when you fix it. Almost verbatim, who builds really good quality mixed use and higher density housing that does help. This is all transit oriented development we're talking about. This is all climate friendly. This is all affordable, market rate affordable housing that fits everything, right? So we just can't get it built. So how do you? That's always been the challenge, right, Katie? So I appreciate, Dante, your questioning, because it's hard to, like, what are we agreeing to here? And it's hard to put it down into just the kind of. I think in the end, Katie, I need to understand, right? So the new methodology we're going to, because it is the thinking that I have started with, which is I am protecting what we have said we want to do in the general plan, right? Everything we articulate about, even the trails plans and everything else, is that we're still. You're seeing we're still going to be able to plan and plan, and and that's your basic stuff, right?
Yeah. Would you like me to address that?
Yes, go ahead. Yes, please.
Okay. I thought there was a question in there somewhere, so I just want to make sure before I jump in. So I think your question, correct me if I'm wrong, is if I'm saying that we need to look at this tangibility lens, and I'm saying that you need to be scaling back a bit, right? You're not shooting for the horizon, you're just shooting for the first mile of getting yourself to the horizon. How are we making sure that we're meeting those general plan targets? The first thing that's really important to understand is what the general plan is. When you adopt the general plan, you're adopting the vision. But when you are adopting that vision, you are also adopting a development envelope for a maximum build out scenario. So that is like your biggest wish and dreams kind of build out scenario. In the Bridge District, we referred that to as maximum build out. And that was 12.5 million square feet of development in the Bridge District. When we talk about moving over to this more like tangible lens, applying not creating a development impact fee so that we can cover the maximum development, but creating an impact fee that says, okay, what can we reasonably expect the development will be in the next 5 to 10 years? It's going to be something less than that general plan horizon. It's likely going to be something in 20 years less than that maximum, because that maximum is just the envelope that we can't go above. But when you look in the Bridge District, you have 12.5 million is the maximum, but the expected build out is 9 million square feet is the expected build out. So a lot of our financing, a lot of our infrastructure is centered on supporting 9 million square feet of development. We also have a sort of like worst case scenario development that's sort of like hidden in our financing documents, which is 6 million square feet of development. And so this notion that you would have a planning document that says, here's everything that I want and need if I got all my development, if I maximize the utility of every square foot of land that I could ever have developed, this is what I need. But the reality is that we never achieve full utility. Right. We never maximize our land use, our developable, footprint. We're always doing something less than that. And this issue of applying that tangibility lens that was done in the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Master Plan is that it acknowledged that the goal was to develop an impact fee program based on expected development in the near-term horizon, consistent with the general plan, but scaled down to have reasonable expectations of what the type of utility that we would see in development, that we wouldn't see the maximum on every single parcel, but that we would see something 80, 70% of that maximum on most parcels. Occasionally it would be less, occasionally it would be more. And that's really what we're talking about when we're saying that first issue of tangibility.
Well, and maybe I'm conflating issues here because I still, again, I'm supportive of this. But when you say it's come out, the development or the build out has come out less than what we have planned, always does, then that triggers a flag for me, because part of our whole plan was based on a certain amount of density and a certain amount of rooftops and a certain amount of even the economics of the area. I mean, how do you substantiate? So
it was built on the expected, which is that 9, but we still have still have a ceiling of 12.5. We right-sized our infrastructure in the Bridge District to the expected, the target development envelope, but we still are hopeful and hope to have the opportunity to go above that. But we really did take sort of a, we're going to shoot for the stars, but we'll be happy if we just leave the atmosphere. That's really the approach that we took. And so, yeah, I think to Chris, I would say, excuse me, sorry. Councilman Ledesma, sorry, no, Chris. What I would say to you, is that this is something that is a best practice. It's not an absolute. You can design your capital facilities projects on the maximum build out. The concern is that you might oversize them. The concern is that you might spend money building capacity into your infrastructure system that you never get to use, that you have to maintain, that doesn't serve anybody because it's extra capacity. And I think if you look at the cross section of Lake Washington Boulevard, when everybody assumed that there was going to be a Sutterville Bridge, and now there's just gigantic cross section of Lake Washington Boulevard, that is that realization of over time, the expectations of that infrastructure has changed. And wouldn't we have loved to have a crystal ball note to know not to build a cross section of Lake Washington Boulevard? And so what we're saying is, let's scale back a little bit. We'll still get everything that we want. We'll still get everything that we need, but we're going to, I'm use a business terminology for supply chain. We're going to move to a just in time versus a just in case model of managing our inventory. And so we're going to make sure that we right-size our infrastructure as development comes along. We keep in mind that sometimes a 4-lane road has to be a 6-lane road, so we don't just build a 4-lane road.
Well,
But if the road,
I mean, that's what it's gonna come down to, right? And I think that's where I'm saying I'm conflating issues, because frankly, I was on the planning commission when we said that wide swath of road, and we were told we have to build it, Lake Washington, right? And you know, we didn't have the foresight to think about all this then. We were so young and in the city. So I'm thinking about the future councils. We make this decision, and they're gonna be thinking about what we need, these capital improvements that we are planning for.
Yeah.
And will we have what we need? Are we providing for what we need for them to get it right? So that's
absolutely. What we're doing is we're providing like a two-step process instead of a one-step process. What we would be proposing, and we're getting a little ahead of ourselves because you actually haven't approved this recommendation number 2, which is to come back and give you some more ideas about how we can do this better. But to answer your question, one of the things that we could come back and discuss in greater detail is how we would say, okay, here's your maximum build out. Here's what you need for your maximum build out, but here's what you need in the next 10 years. And you would be able to assess the needs of the community with 2 timelines, and be able to make decisions about how you were going to fund things with that information, instead of just turning to the general plan and saying, that's what I need, because the general plan says that I need that. That's one example of how we might do that. The other thing is that, as you know, you are a big proponent of changing technologies. But does any of us know what the circulation systems are going to look like in 10, 20 years? And having this kind of approach does allow us to sort of anticipate the unanticipated and remain flexible. Right. So I hope I answered your question about the general plan.
I'm trying to get to understanding, right? Because you're trying, as you're educating our newest member of the council, you're also unwinding, you know, for me, 20 years of sort of been in the system and how we calculate it towards a new one, which is, I don't want to say it's risky. It's not. It's just a different, and how we think about it. And what I'm after more than anything is I'm frustrated that we put as much time, energy, resources into places like the Washington neighborhood and the Bridge District, and we just haven't seen the thrust of growth that I was hoping for.
And I think that gets that first feasibility issue.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Katie, so much for all the work.
Absolutely.
And your enthusiasm.
All right. So, Councilmember Early, do you have another comment, or is your hand just up? Oh, okay.
Well, I do. I just wanted to make sure I was being respectful of all of my other fellow council members. So on the policy, so first of all, Katie, that was excellent. I got there. It took me a minute, but I got there. I said thank you. So on the policy part of this, then what I'm hearing and things that are really important to me and to, I think, the communities here in West Sacramento as well, is with this potential change, again, we haven't voted on it yet, but with this potential change, what I would hope and what I'm hearing is we would make it more affordable to build housing, which means we could grow more housing in certain parts of West Sacramento. So that's thing one, I think, if I'm understanding this right, which is great because part of the supply chain that you talked about is the more supply you have, right, the more affordable it is to be able to buy houses, right?
Absolutely.
So that's one. I appreciate the fact that it will allow for more growth of housing, various kinds of housing. But two, I think on a policy perspective, and I hope you're considering this, you touched on equity. I want to make sure I call it out and name it, that when you're coming back to us, you're also taking into account potential gentrification, right, that we would not want. And hopefully from a policy perspective, really looking into how we could ensure, as we are potentially growing out the north, right, and potentially allowing for more growth, that in that growth, that we don't push out communities that have been there, that are the fabric of West Sacramento. So I think from a policy perspective, that would be the only thing I ask.
Okay, no problem.
All right. There aren't any comments. I'm going to open it up. Councilmember Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, thank you, Councilmember Early, because that did hit on something on the gentrification. I was concerned about that. I also have a question. With this planning on fee reductions, I saw the letter from the chamber where it mentions commercial development. And I know it's great, you stimulate the economy, there are more jobs out there, that's healthy growth. But I did have a question. Are you looking, when you're doing this and you're creating this policy, are you looking at a 24-year-old West Sacramento plan? I remember we talked about that at our last council meeting, the way everything had been sort of planned out. And I realized there have been changes, to some of the what would you call it, infrastructure, patterns that they had. Is that what you're using right now, or are you using something totally different? I'm just
Yeah, so my apologies, Councilwoman. I wasn't at the last meeting, so your point of reference for starting your question is foreign to me. Would you elaborate a little bit more so I can appropriately answer your question?
When we had our last council meeting, we were talking about how much plans have changed for the city. They were talking about small little.
Oh, that was the retreat.
Oh, it was a retreat. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
that's why Katie wasn't there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Katie. Okay.
That was okay.
All right. But that's what was running through my mind right now. I'm just wondering, if we're using those types of plans, where the townships.
Yeah, so that is so yes, absolutely. So like I said, there's two issues. There's the feasibility, which is, are we making sure that we are not having this be a burden to housing? And then there's this other issue, which is, are we deploying all the best practices that you would use to ensure that you're not relying upon outdated planning, right? You're not putting in a cross section for a bridge that doesn't exist anymore in any planning document. And so that tangibility piece is that boots on the ground. That's, I can see what's a mile ahead of me, and I'm gonna plan for that. I'm not going to plan 3 miles ahead because I can't see it that well. And it's the same thing. It's saying I'm going to build my capital facilities projects, and I'm going to build my planning around that. I'm going to build my budgeting around that, my CIP around something that's a little nearer term, a little bit more foreseeable. And I'm using data sources that the same people that are looking to invest in our community are using to decide if they're investing in our community. And I'm using those as my justifications for what are my needs. So to answer your question, yes, this policy approach that we're talking about in the top 2 recommendations that we're looking to come back to you would be solidly grounded in this notion that we should not be using plans that forecast way out into the future that cannot predict how plans will change or how market trends will change or how technology will change. We really do want to keep things grounded to what we can reasonably and reliably count upon. And when we're making our plans and we're spending the city's precious dollars, and we're coming to you asking for budget recommendations and approvals.
Katie, real quick on the commercial, I can understand where we want to get commercial development. Would you have different types of impact fees? So for, let's say, places that are commercially, like, let's say McDonald's or chain stores, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to for smaller businesses, individual.
Yeah, so our impact fees are, and this is not my area of expertise on commercial, but I will tell you that they're done by square footage and they're done by the use. So they don't really get into that like detail. We certainly could look and see if there's some way, if you have some direction you want to give us today related to those impact fees. If there's some uses that you don't want to have spring up, we certainly can do that. I think we would also point out that our planning documents are relatively robust in terms of, being land use regulate. They have land use regulations in them. They really are very careful about what they want and what they don't want in those areas. So I think we would look to first to see if we could just rely upon those regulatory documents to sort of keep out uses that are not desirable. And then if we needed to go further, to look and see if we were going to be sort of carving out certain uses for this reduction. That's certainly something that we could look into.
Okay. And in terms of housing that was brought up, the affordable housing that we're putting up, like with Mercy, and those fees would definitely be different than fees for more high-end housing. Is that correct?
So yeah, our fees are not determined by the value of the improvement or how the rents are collected. They are determined on a per unit basis. So if it's a multifamily high-end or luxury condo versus affordable housing, they're calculated by their impact. Their impact isn't expected to be different whether they're affordable or not, except for their parking. That does have different regulations. But I think what you'll see, and if you would excuse this minor tangent, Washington has been declared through the Washington Realized study to be overly prescribed for affordable housing. It has too much affordable housing, and we need to get some market rate, some affordable by design in there. So that's been our goal with Washington Realize since 2015, is to not look to get affordable by covenant, but really look to bring in these affordable by design projects. And then the Central Business District is a mixed use district, and it's really designed not to have standalone residential. And so it would not be an ideal location for affordable housing. It would be more ideal for a mixed use project that has, ground floor retail and then apartments above it or something like that.
Okay. If I could just interject a little bit on that, just to add that the fees that are being proposed to be revised, though, would benefit affordable housing, new affordable housing, because right now they pay the same fee load that, like Katie said, other types of housing do. That's been a challenge. All the affordable projects that we do have in the Washington District and the Mercy Housing Project and all the projects that are outside of the Bridge District really have had to pay the current fees, and frankly, the cities have to subsidize that in the form of affordable housing loans. So I just want to be clear about that. Everything Katie said is completely spot on. But if we do build additional affordable housing, which we plan to in the riverfront areas down the road, those projects would benefit from what we're proposing.
All right. There's no other questions or comments. I'll open up the public comment. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
Yes, ma'am. Our first speaker is Stu Pettygrove. Mr. Pettygrove?
Yes, here I am. I apologize for my artistic design there, and I don't see a control on me to get that turned off. So I hope it won't be too distracting. My name is Stu Pettygrove. I support the city staff recommendations to look at the adjusting the impact fees charged to infill residential. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My wife and I live in Davis. We've been there for 42 years, raised our children, and now we've chosen West Sacramento as our new home. So 5 years ago, we joined a small group that's planning to create West Sacramento's first co-housing community, located on a half-acre lot at 4th and G Street in the Washington neighborhood, and we've named it Washington Commons. And about 3 years ago, we still had a small group. We bought the property at 4th and G, the half-acre lot. Despite the challenges, we have since then grown to 27 households, and we've created a self-governing community and completed plans for a 4-story all-electric building with 35 privately owned condos and 6,000 square feet of shared interior community space. We're now just a few weeks away from the start of construction. We're looking forward. It's a lovely neighborhood, and we've gotten to know it over the last few years. And I'm really looking forward to playing an active role in the city and in the local Washington and Broderick neighborhoods. Our members are all our future residents, and we have so far invested of our own money $8 million in the project. I would like to provide a partial list of the places that these members in the 27 households will be moving from to the 4th and G lot in this wonderful city. And here's the list: Davis, Pleasanton, Oakland, Walnut Creek, Cloverdale, San Francisco, Sutter Creek. Also, New York, Maryland, New Hampshire, and Arizona, and Sacramento. Now, the challenges: in the last 18 months, the projected costs have risen by 23%. This is market rate, 23%. In 2021, we lost 3 of our member households who were simply priced out. Right now, we're looking at fees to the city of $58,000 per unit. So we look forward to action by the city council to take a look at these fees on infill residential development in the Washington neighborhood. And I want to thank the staff in the West Sacramento Planning Department and the city council members for their support and skill in helping us get this unique project off the ground. Thank you.
Next speaker is Ann Gerardi.
Good evening. My name is Ann Garrity. I live in downtown Sacramento. I'm a founding member of Washington Commons and very much looking forward to the construction of our 35-unit co-housing community. We are excited, as Stu said, about becoming part of this community and part of this city. It's been several years in the making, and we've had many setbacks, including most recently the higher costs related to the COVID-19 supply chain issues. And as Stu mentioned, we have lost some of our members because of this. Additionally, the higher costs have made it difficult to attract newer households to fill the community. We're moving forward in spite of the additional costs because we are so committed to what we are creating. A multifamily community with many sustainability features, just the sort of development envisioned by the City Council for this infill area, as well as by the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. We urge the council to take this action to reduce these residential impact fees. Thank you.
Hello.
Sorry, the next speaker is Alfred Melbourne.
Hey, yeah, great. Thanks for the presentation and for all the questions, Dante and Chris. Really didn't quite understand what was going on, and I hear the economic impact fees, and I think of environmental impact report and direct and indirect when it comes to bringing businesses and technology to our area. And when it comes to like developing areas, I think as the folks from the West Sacramento Commons are talking about, it's great to have these awesome projects coming here with people, you know, investing in the community. But I always, you know, think of, you know, the gentrification of our area and us trying to maintain a standard of living, needing living wage jobs with benefits so that we can continue to to pay these higher rents or and get in position to become first-time homeowners and whatnot. So I know that there's some other programs out there, but mainly I wanted to talk about the environmental impact reports and direct and indirect when it comes to business, commerce, and even some of these private homes or projects. So thank you.
The next speaker is Thomas.
Unmute. Thank you. Thank you to the council for inviting us to talk on this subject. As Ann and Stu were, I'm a member of Washington Commons. And from that standpoint, I come to you as a developer. We're a peculiar kind of developer in that we have come together as a group to create residence for ourselves. So we're acting in the form of a developer. At the same time, I'm coming to you as a future resident of West Sacramento. So I'll have a couple of words to say on both of those, from both of those standpoints. From the developer standpoint, and from the vantage point of having served on our group's planning, budgeting, and financing group, I strongly support this proposal. The current or initial impact fees for our project accounted for somewhat more than 10% of our total budget. And thus they were a significant factor in our decision making. And although we obviously can't count on the council making a decision one way or the other, we view this, and it was part of our decision making, as at least a potential decision on the part of the council to reduce these fees. So from the standpoint of the impact fees on decision making, it's clear that for any developer, for profit, or in our case, kind of a cooperative developer, these impact fees are definitely part of the decision-making process. In addition to having our development proceed, we think it's highly desirable because we intend to create for the city of West Sacramento a built-in community of highly desirable civic-minded residents. And although the impact fee program is not necessarily targeted toward our kind of development, we might serve as a worthwhile example for similar efforts in the city in the future. From the standpoint of a future West Sacramento resident, I support the proposal as an example of a carefully considered effort to steer the city's growth. A thoughtful approach to raising public funds, balancing the sources of funding in a considered manner rather than in a one-size-fits-all kind of policy. That seems to make eminent good sense. Also, approaching this in a step-by-step manner where you get feedback as you go, to me, is clearly also sensible. I think Katie Yancey's earlier comment that you're going to proceed with precision, I think that was a wonderful.
That's 3 minutes.
Wonderful word. So thank you. And I support this proposal.
Next speaker is Rhonda Pope Flores. Ms. Flores?
Hello. I just want to, just say that, I understand the, the need to lower impact fees, but also I guess I would caution that, you lower impact fees, you have planned revenue that's expected from those impact fees, whether or not there's been an analysis of how you'll deal with that. So that's one thing. The other thing is that, I just want to say that I really feel that the city of West Sacramento really needs to leverage when they're working with these developers. And, and I know there's some of you on the phone listening, and I apologize if I offend you, but for the need of the community and dealing with impact and dealing with, mitigating and all of those factors, I think it's important that there's serious consideration and there's a considerable analysis done on this process before you move forward. If it's been done, then so be it. But I just think it's very important when you're making this decision to lower fees, how that's going to impact, other things that are currently being funded by these impact fees. So I'm just concerned about that. And that's my comment. My one other comment, I would say, I heard Alfred talking about environmental impact. And I just want to caution that, and I want to bring this out that, when you're along that river, okay, now I'm putting my chairwoman hat on. So I'm the chairwoman for Buena Vista Rancheria of Miwok Indians. And we do a lot with, deal a lot with historic archaeology and things that are uncovered when developers are building, especially along rivers. I just want to put some caution out there that you need to be very careful about uncovering, ancestral remains, archaeology. That is a very sensitive area along that river. And you had many tribes that lived along that river. So I just wanted to bring that point as well. And thank you.
Our next speaker is Maria Grijalba. Ms. Grijalba?
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. And I wanted to remind everyone, and thank you for Chairman or Chairwoman Pope to remind everyone that she's the chairperson of a tribe, and it's okay to be bluntly honest. And I think we need to remind everyone that the chairwoman donated $10,000, and I think it's a lot more to the city, and that we ought to honor the chair by applying some of that money towards the pool. But I'm actually wanted to say that I think I'm in favor of any impact fee that help the north area and to prevent further gentrification. And I want to remind all of us that, along with Chairwoman Pope, that there are many founding families here, and those impact fees need to benefit those families. In addition to Council Member Alcala that grew up here and her family, there's many families here that grew up here, and they need to not be pushed out of here. And as Alfred was saying, there needs to be affordable housing here, and those impact fees need to benefit those families. And I'm so grateful that this co-housing is being created. That's wonderful. Well, how about some co-housing for us, so that some of us that are indigenous in this north area are able to stay here in affordable and are not pushed out of the north area because of gentrification, because of that 10-year injunction that was created, that pushed so many out of us out of here, that created that reduced voting age population that occurred. And so please keep that in mind. That was actually a very, very good presentation. And that's what I want to say. The chair has given more than plenty of money. What's up with that? Why is that being ignored? Why is that not being acknowledged? And we definitely need to acknowledge that that's tribal territory, Patwin territory again. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
We have no additional people requesting to make comment, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Closing the public comment. We'll bring it back to council. And Katie, I just want to say thank you so much for the amount of work you put into this background document. It is very, well, it's pretty dense, I'll tell you that. Has a lot of depth and understanding and a lot of knowledge. And I encourage everybody to read it. There is references to reports like Mind the Gap that SACOG, presented. And I had the benefit and the privilege representing the city to be on the board and hearing this presentation, realizing that I think we have a ways to go to building housing. One of the things in my other hat, representing Los Angeles County on homelessness is, the supply and demand. And one of the reasons why we have an extraordinary, high, homelessness rate in California is because people cannot afford housing. People cannot afford rent. People cannot, stay in their homes. It's been referenced as gentrification, but I think it's more than that. It's a result of housing availability. And you reference very clearly that we are falling behind on being able to achieve that here in West Sacramento. And you explained that there's lack of interest due to our impact fee. And you did your job researching and comparing it with other jurisdictions. Now, early on, it may have made sense to have high impact fees, given that we were a growing city and we didn't have a lot of revenue sources to buffer, a reduction at that time. Now we do. We do have more housing. We do have, property taxes coming in as revenue. I think this is a good time for us to take a look at the impact fee and reduce it to attract more housing here in the city. And establishing housing such as the Washington Commons. And and Garrity, thank you so much for all your work and working together with your coalition in establishing that co-housing model And yes, like to see models like that duplicated throughout the city and see what we can do, and you're going to be the spokesperson out there. And then I know you have open meetings and discussions that I encourage, maybe through BB Can or through other groups, do some outreach so that we can see how we can expand that. Yeah, 58,000 per unit is, for that particular housing model is very expensive and cost prohibitive. And seeing, what we can do, given that it's a great model, we need to reduce that in order for us to be able to make it affordable for anybody to be able to get involved in a project like that. Gentrification, I think, is sometimes oversimplified term. And here, what I'm noticing is a system that we are creating if we don't pass this. And I think that this proposal, because it's such a nuanced, very in the weeds kind of proposal, I think and again, I'm fortunate to have my experience in the Planning Commission, with Chris, and just the background to understand, infill housing and from SACOG and from other activities that I'm involved in, that infill housing is incredibly important here in West Sacramento in order for us to move ahead and advance in building more housing. In order to be able to draw in partners like Jamboree Housing or Mercy, to be able to build housing that is going to be affordable in the future. And we are, I think, successful, but not to the level that I think, people are very interested in partnering with us, but not at this time with the rate. And we did get, quite a few letters. I was very impressed with the number of letters that we received in our public comment, and it is posted publicly in our city's website. That I encourage people to take a look at that. That you will see a lot of support from people all over the place, and encouraging that we approve this. And, one of the recommendations that the Building Industry Association had made when you asked whether we should tether it to one particular area was to look at it from a holistic approach, which I agree. And in taking a look at your recommendations. And, I do have one question, but I do support all 6 of your recommendations and appreciate the level of work. It's been, a couple of years since you began this endeavor. And it just looks like you've done an incredible job in researching and then presenting it with all of your energy and enthusiasm, which I know your whole team shares with you. And I'm really grateful for that. I think we're very fortunate to have the team that we have here in West Sacramento to be able to, do something like this. I mean, I wish I could go out and, speak more publicly about what you've accomplished here. To the League of Cities or to any other organization, because I think this is groundbreaking, what we're achieving here. And, to be able to meet our RENA requirements, we need to be able to establish opportunities to, draw more production, housing production here. So I'm really grateful. The question I do have is, how long would it take in returning with, we will have the temporary fee reductions, to have something established permanently. How much time do you think you need?
So that is a really good question, and one that I'm not really in a position to answer, since it will be a collaborative effort of planning and finance to get that done. I think, I could turn the question over to Roberta or Andrea if they want to unmute themselves.
I'll take it.
Yeah, you can take it. That'd be great. As I say, I'm stalling until someone says
that's a great question, and I don't want to put either one of them on the spot because, like Katie said, there is a major role for both departments. Just to put it in kind of practical terms, it's both the kind of on the finance side, which fees are we really discounting, and kind of the gap analysis of that. How does that impact our ability to deliver projects, and how are we making adjustments there? But also on an even more practical side, the software that we use to actually tell people how much they have to pay in fees. There's a lot of work that goes into updating that. And so that happens in community development. So between the two of those things, I would say I want to give them the right amount of time to do it, which is why I think, Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, why we're asking for this temporary reduction in one of the recommendations.
Yeah,
Right. So
yeah. There's the sort of it takes some time to do the short term fix, and it takes even longer to do the permanent long term.
yeah, now I will say also as I looked at this item and all three departments involved in this, I think did a great job putting it together. As we project ahead, both for the reason that you asked about how long is it going to take to make this, to actually implement the full program, but also to give us time to analyze whether it's working. That's one of the reasons the program is proposed, I believe, is a 3-year with an optional add-on of additional 2 years. Because at the end of the day, at the end of that time frame, we need to be able to tell the council, market aside, we don't know what the market's going to do, but if all things were constant, we need to be able to say, did it work? And then did it work in terms of both producing the housing, and then did it work in producing additional revenue that we would have otherwise not received, both in terms of fee revenue, but more importantly, new property tax, new sales tax, new transient occupancy tax with hotels, that not just fill the gaps in the infrastructure, but also provide funding for other city services. So that's a long way of saying, give us at least a few months, I think, but it is a priority for all three departments involved. I just don't want to put the directors on the spot with giving an exact time frame, but just know that it's at the top of our agenda. And it ties to other council strategic plan items as well. So we'll be on it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And if I could, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Katie.
Oh, thank you. What I wanted to say is, so you didn't ask, but there are 6 recommendations. The top 2 recommendations, which are more policy based, we expect that we should be able to return to the council before the end of the fiscal year. So hopefully with the budget, we would be able to do that. As far as the resolution for adjusting the fees, as Aaron said, there's a lot of complications there, but I wanted to let you know that it's not all to be determined. We do have a time frame for those first 2 recommendations.
Okay, thank you so much. And also, as it relates to, moving forward, I just want to just be able to, applaud the amount of energy and work you're going to have to put into all of this to make this happen. Something that I appreciate Chris Ledesma's participation in the groundbreaking of the Washington Commons. I wasn't able to attend. I was on a cruise at the time, Chris, but enjoying. But I appreciate you being there, present. So that you can welcome our new residents who are arriving, and would like the opportunity, and I think open the door for anybody here to have like an open house and a discussion. Now that COVID's kind of, the numbers are improving, just to be able to learn a little more about that. I know it's just, ground, but just to be able to, see from the individuals themselves, to be able to learn. I know, Chris, you probably got a lot of background in there from speaking with the people and the value this has in our community. And, taking a look at, just improving, our climate action plan. It's this kind of infill housing is going to achieve that, because it is going to be bringing in housing closer to transportation pathways. That's something we've been, as you mentioned, Katie, our bike and pedestrian pathways, our public transportation via and further expansions as we look, along the riverfront, whether it be the light rail or whatever comparable in the future that people will be having access to in those areas, so that, people are going to be out of their cars, not going to be having these high gas emissions, and people will be able to, in the future, taking a look at ways to reduce greenhouse gases. So that's the benefit of this proposal that I have seen, and just try to translate, and repeat, because I know you mentioned it, because I heard some comments about environmental impact, and this proposal we will benefit it in the long run with the environmental impact it will have by reducing, the greenhouse gases and improving our climate action plan. And with that, I'll ask for any other comments, Dr. Early.
Yeah, I wanted to just touch on, Martha, the gentrification comment you made, just about, sometimes it can be an oversimplification. And I think for me, I want to make sure, because even with our recent housing boom and what we've seen in regards to the affordability and rents to live here, this has actually been going on, right, for years, even before what we've been seeing here. And in regards to people who grew up in West Sacramento who can't afford to live here anymore, this is not a recent event. And for me, what I would want to make sure, Katie, that when you're coming back to us, that the kinds of data that you're saying that you're building into that model, take that into account. Take into account that you have affordable housing and whether residents who have lived here previously are being able to access that. Take into account whether you are building in potentially programs that people who have lived here for generations can tap into and realize the lower impact fees potentially to build or buy the land that they have here. And so that's the only thing I would want to touch on here, because I would be remiss when we talk about building housing and affordable housing if we don't continue to have that lens and have that as our North Star, because I think it's important that we maintain the diversity of West Sacramento, and it's easy to let that go.
Right. It is, I would say that if we kept on the track that we are now, I think we will have an impact on the increased cost of housing, which I see regionally, as I'm looking at reports, our housing, prices are going up. And it's going up because there's not a whole lot of competition for what's available. It's just people snatching it at, coming in with a higher bid than what the is on the market. And so people are outbidding, each other. And if we don't, build more housing at an affordable rate and attract, developers who are going to be developing, in a way that's going to keep and I think that's what our goal is, hopefully here, is to ensure that we build housing at a rate that people here locally can purchase. We have, I think, a high number of people with salaries that, if they're state employees, it's not that high. So you want to be able to build housing that they can afford, to live, work, and play within a really good, reasonable distance, and just continue on that track.
And Martha, I agree with you. I would say it's a yes and. Yes, we need more supply, but we also need to ensure that as we're doing that and building more supply, that we also allow for opportunities for people who have lived here for generations. So agree with you 100%. We absolutely need more supply, and I am a huge proponent and supporter of the recommendations, Katie, that we've made here. It sounds like similar to the rest of my colleagues. And just wanting to, as you say that you're going to go back and look at the model, that you're coming back, right? That I'm giving you that feedback, but that's something that I'm going to be asking you when you come back.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Katie.
No, I was just saying, yeah, I understand what you're looking for. And we're going to come back probably internally to sort of give you some research into this, because there are some limitations in terms of how we can restrict affordable housing for only like local folks. So we'll have to come back and sort of maybe do a little bit of education on that and how that would relate to the impact fees, because I think there are some limitations that the city would have to sort of articulate before we could come back with a solution.
Councilmember Ledesma?
I think Norma had her hand up.
Oh, Norma, sorry. I couldn't even see your color there. It's blended into the light behind you.
Yeah.
No, I'm so sorry. I actually didn't. I just have to lower my hand. There we go.
Well, I think we had public comment, right, and a motion. I'm gonna make the motion.
We ended public comment. So if you would like to have a motion.
Yeah, but I would like to say one thing. I think you're absolutely right to my colleagues to think about gentrification. But I also want us to remind us that even in our retreat in the staff proposal, right? Because it's a great question about how do we use this, and how does this strategically fit in with plans that we have to ensure that local families, and there's opportunities for local families, business owners. It's one of the reasons we brought up, and we at the strategic planning session, both the support for the paper that Aaron and team brought up around the equitable investments, right, and how that might be able to help facilitate, activate certain neighborhoods, but also the small business initiative that we need to get behind. We need to support those folks, and I think that's a policy question. I know I want to follow up with Aaron on it, see if we can make some road down that. But all of this makes sense because you need rooftops to even support local business, right? And I think we do it right, but we're disciplined about kind of what we want to see. I think we have a real opportunity here to get it right? And I think with all these things in mind. So again, just takes diligence and us asking them all the right questions, which we did today. Really happy This is a great discussion, and Katie, thank you. And with that, Madam Mayor, I'll make the motion to go forward with the recommended action.
Second. Oh, okay, competition.
I've been waiting to second this for a minute, so
You know what?
it's on me.
I will withdraw first. I'll withdraw my second so Karina can take a second.
So, Councilmember Ledesma moved and Councilmember Early seconded. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Early. Councilmember Alcala.
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco.
Aye.
Mayor Guerrero.
Aye. Thank you so much, Katie, for all your hard work on this. I know you have your work cut out for you. So thank you for taking all these notes and look forward to your report back.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is item 23 under capital projects is consideration of first reading of ordinance 22-15 amending title 10 vehicles and traffic of the municipal code relating to the reestablishment of speed limits on certain streets within the city of West Sacramento, CIP 12019. And
I have to recuse myself and from the marshal portion of this. I think it's the
item 25 of the analysis.
Exactly.
Yes.
And just to provide some clarification on that, what we recommend is to have staff give the presentation on the item. And when it comes back to council for discussion, if there is specific discussion about the road segment that Councilmember Early is recusing herself from, she would go off camera and stay on mute during that portion of the discussion. But she can join the council on the other road segments, no problem. When the council takes up a vote, assuming we get to that point where the segments are considered, we would advise that the council should take up Marshall Road separately. And you could do that first and then take up the other group of segments as a whole council after that. So hopefully that's clear. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Ryan Teves is ready to go.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Can you introduce yourself? You're new to me. Can you?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Ryan Tibes, Senior Engineer for the Capital Projects Department.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
So, good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. As I mentioned, my name is Ryan Tibes, Senior Engineer for the Capital Projects Department. First, I would like to commend Joanna Ortiz for her work on this item. Also, will be supporting tonight's regular agenda item on consideration of first reading of Ordinance 22-15, amending Title 10, Vehicles and Traffic of Municipal Code relating to the reestablishment of speed limits on certain streets within the city of West Sacramento. With me tonight is Vin Kay, Supervising Engineer for the Capital Projects Department, Lieutenant Jason Winger, Police Department, and Ravi Narayanan, Project Manager of the Speed Surveys and Data Collection with Mott McDonald. In coordination with the California Vehicle Code, Section 22358, and the city's police department, and to support police enforcement of speed limit, a traffic study and engineering survey is necessary to establish and set speed limits for enforcement. At this time, staff respectfully recommends that the City Council approves the recommended action to waive the first reading and read by title and number only, Ordinance 22-15, amending Title 10, Vehicles and Traffic of the Municipal Code relating to the reestablishment of speed limits on certain streets within the city of West Sacramento. And the other recommended action, inform the public that the second reading and adoption of Ordinance 22-15 is scheduled for April 6, 2022. I would like to now share a quick presentation and summary of the speed data and segment study and open the floor to Mr. Narayanan for a brief introduction and background on the street segments, data collected, as well as respond to any questions the council or public have. Thank you. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Good, so with that, Ravi Narayan.
Sorry, hey Brian, at least on my screen it's showing in, you could put it in slideshow mode. It's in, isn't everyone else seeing that?
Yeah, it's in notes mode,
Yeah.
so we can see your note.
Yeah, if you could
If
just
you
put
have
it in,
no notes.
hit the little slide thing on the bottom right. Good.
Let's see here.
Ryan, would you rather have me share my screen or whatever
Possibly.
works?
Let me try one more time.
Yeah.
Okay, is that better?
Yep. That's
Perfect.
Good.
Okay. Go ahead, Robbie, take it away.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Again, I'm Ravi Narayanan with Mott McDonald, a consultant assisting the Capital Projects Department with on-call traffic engineering and transport planning services. And so this is the second set of segments in follow-through to the first set of segments that Council approved, certified earlier in 2021. So we are presenting our second segment findings, approximately about 25 or so segments that you see on your screen here, of which there are a grand total of 4 segments where speed limit increases are being recommended based on the methodology for engineering and traffic speed surveys consistent with the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices procedures and California Vehicle Code stipulations. So as you can see on your screen here, on the vast majority of the segments that are being here tonight, we are recommending that the existing current posted speed limits be retained with no changes. There are 4 segments that are highlighted in bold on this slide that you see here that are technically recommendations for a speed limit increase based on the data. I mean, this entire effort is, by the way, just a data-driven analysis that looks at prevailing speeds, what we call 85th percentile speeds of the sampled population of drivers using these different corridors. And we base our recommendations on prevailing speeds and conditions not readily apparent to the driver, as well as collision data and history for the segments in question, and other considerations like the planning context of the fronting side streets and the functional capacity classification of these roadways, and so on and so forth. So the 4 segments that are recommended for speed limit increases are, that you can see from this slide, are Del Monte Street between Harbor Boulevard and Seabrian Street, and in the industrial part of town, and then F Street between 8th Street and 2nd Street, and Marshall Road between Seymour, Jefferson Boulevard, also F Street between Jefferson and 8th Street. And I have more data and reports and technical information that I'm happy to go in depth into, depending on the questions that may be asked, or if you need any clarifications. But again, tonight's agenda is just to present the recommendations to you and take your feedback, listen to any questions, and offer any explanations as the mayor and council members may have.
All right. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me bring it back to council for any questions. Trying to see everybody. The only person I don't see, oh, there's Chris. I don't see anybody who has questions. All right. I do have a couple of questions. I do see the speed limits, number 1 through 26. And I think I just see 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. I'm wondering about, in those 4 areas, you know, just the ability to be able to track, there was a public comment that I read about making sure that there's both, you know, bike and pedestrian safety, as long as the roads are painted appropriately. So if we're increasing the speed in those areas, was that taken into consideration?
Is there any specific segment, Mayor, that you're referring to, or are you asking in general?
There was a public comment that referenced the Marshall Road area, and I think that's the one area that was referenced.
Okay, that's correct. So Marshall Road between Seymour and Jefferson Boulevard. Again, these are the prevailing speeds based on what the driving public is currently tending to drive at. And we do look at accident data, collision data, and other context-based issues for the corridor. And overall, the recommendation for increase in speed limits on Marshall Road from 25 to 35 miles per hour is based on the entire corridor. The adjacent segment of Marshall Road to the west of Seymour Avenue is actually posted for a 35 mile per hour speed limit. So there is a continuity issue as well as what the prevailing speeds are on this segment itself. Your question, we are not necessarily assuming any improvements above and beyond what's out there today. The status quo is what this is really a reflection of. Now, in other words, it's an engineering study that measures travel speeds of the traveling public in the present day condition, and not necessarily trying to intervene with speeding behavior. In other words, we cannot arbitrarily retain existing speed limit or post for 30 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour if that is what the data is showing. That would be an intervention, meaning a traffic calming treatment or some kind of a planning or engineering improvement for the corridor that we would have to implement in order to achieve a speed limit that is lower than the recommended revised speed limit.
I see. I think you tried that already. I don't know if it worked. There was that roundabout out there that people just drive zip through. From my observations, that's when it transitions from 35 to 25. That roundabout is in the middle. I don't see speeds being lowered. In fact, I see a lot of truck traffic coming through that area that is illegal. And I assume that if you balance the mileage, so does the mileage, once you increase it as a result of your research, does that help with enforcement?
Actually, it does. It supports enforcement as opposed to encouraging enforcement per se. See, the enforcement, again, in a broad nutshell, the reason we do these periodic engineering and traffic speed surveys is to support enforcement primarily. And research has shown that speed limits that are posted close to the 85th percentile speeds are, statistically speaking, the most enforceable. And any speed limit that is arbitrarily below that 85th percentile speed limit tends to be arbitrary and does not get the respect of the traveling public. People, once they figure out these speed limits are way below the 85th percentile speed limit, they routinely and periodically exceed those posted speed limits, and it becomes an enforcement issue. It's like when more than 50%, and I have a slide to that. Brian, if you don't mind, maybe you can bring up that next slide. It gets a little bit technical, or maybe I think this chart that you see in front of you is a telltale of what exactly happens from a mathematical, statistical standpoint. This chart, it's what we call a percentile speed distribution chart, and this is somewhat of a very typical scenario for most residential streets and residential collector type streets in communities like West Sacramento. This is not exactly any particular street in the city, but just a very, very telling typical speed distribution for any corridor that where the prevailing the posted speed limit is around 35 miles per hour. So if you look at this chart right here, the speed distribution is the 85th percentile speed, for instance, say on a street is around 33 miles per hour, which is the actual data that you would get from our surveys. We have this, what we call the round up and the round down guidance that's available from the California MUTCD. So the nearest rounded speed for that 33 mile per hour, 85th percentile speed would be 35. So normally we would post that corridor at 35 miles per hour if there are no other considerations that are not readily apparent to the driving public, like excessive collisions or other types of interference like mid-block interferences and context-specific issues that we look at. A vast majority of times, it's just the prevailing accident exceeding the statewide average. So if that is not the case, and then we would ideally post it to a 35 mile per hour speed, because that's where 85 percentile of the population or more is actually driving below that speed. So you are ticketing only the portion of the traveling public that fall in this portion of the curve where my mouse is, like hardly 10 to 15%. And that becomes forcible and upholdable in a court of law. However, if we were to reduce that speed limit even by 5 miles per hour, we are from 85th, we drop to 60th percentile. And then if you reduce it by an extra 5 miles per hour to the 25 mile per hour speed limit, we are actually seeing 80% of the traveling public are actually traveling above that intended or someone's preferred speed limit of 25 miles per hour. So the message here is the data has to support, the data has to be a reflection of what's happening in the corridor as opposed to what we would like to see happen. In other words, an engineering and traffic study is an engineering study and evaluation of what's actually happening in these corridors, not necessarily what we would like to happen after intervention, so to speak, with traffic calming treatment, other types of solutions, striping, and other types of improvements. So that is why, going back to your question, Mayor, about the enforcement, the engineering and traffic speed surveys, the guidance is explicitly, I mean, it's almost expressly intended and structured in a way to support enforcement. And any arbitrary reductions in speed limits that are not supportable based on data will be potentially untenable and unsupportable when it comes to a court hearing.
That helps, Ravi. I appreciate that. This little diagram is probably the best explanation I've seen. So that makes sense. Okay, if there are no other comments or questions.
I actually do.
Oh, Councilman Mayor Pro Tem Orozco?
Thank you. And I don't know if this is a question for Ravi or another staff member. I was just looking at the report, and with respect to the conversation on this particular area, it looks like there's 7 incidents that were outlined in our packet, and going through them only in this centralized area, it looks like there are only maybe 3 or 4 of them that are in the particular, like I see Marshall Road and Seymour Avenue, and then there's one at Marshall and Otis, and then a couple on Marshall and Jefferson. 2 of those, though, are rear end. It looked like there was back-to-back traffic, and they were noted for unsafe speed. But Robbie, when we're talking about unsafe speed, we're not necessarily talking like people that are going over the posted speed, right? Unsafe speed could also mean just a speed that is safe, unsafe, so that you could rear end the person in front of you in back-to-back traffic.
Again, what exact segment are you referring to, council member?
There's no page numbers on here, but it's, well, you know what, this is a question for the police department because it's a speed collision support summary support. So I apologize for putting that one on you. Perhaps one of our police department, maybe Lieutenant Winger or Chief, could respond to that.
Mayor and council members, Lieutenant Jason Winger and Councilmember Roscoe. Yeah, I do believe what you are asking is correct, is that an unsafe speed doesn't necessarily have to be a high speed. It means that they were going at a speed that did not allow them to react to the situation. So that could be in a particular circumstance and environment that could only be 15 or 20 miles an hour and doesn't necessarily mean they were exceeding the speed limit at the time the collision occurred.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah. So, looking at this, it looks like there's the collision summary for that particular area between January 1st, 2018 and then January 1st, 2021 only references about 7 different events, but all of them are non-injury, and it looks like only one really in that Seymour area is like someone hit a fixed object back in 2018. I'm wondering, is there I know that portion of Marshall is 35, and as the mayor mentioned, that it switches to 25. I'm not sure in what direction it changes, but I'm wondering what area is it, just between Jefferson and Seymour on Marshall, that would be switching from 25 to 35?
That's correct.
Okay. And in that area, I'm envisioning it. What was the justification behind having it at 25? And because I mean, the complexion of that strip, while it is different with a few houses, I wonder, was there any particular reason why it was different?
That's a good question, Council Member. I want to refer that to Ben Kay. I know he's here. I believe there was a school there at one time, which is no longer the case, and
Correct.
Ben could speak more
Green Acres or
intelligently to
something.
that. That's right. So Ben, if you're able to.
Yes. Again, good evening, Mayor and council members. Ben Kay, supervising engineer. Yes, there used to be a preschool on the north side between Seymour, in fact, near Jefferson Boulevard. One of the challenges of a collector street like like Marshall Road, it is not a some of the traffic collisions that you pointed out. Many of those are rear end collisions. Marshall Road to the south also served as a rural buffer to some of the housing developments further south. So there aren't street lights on the south side. And it is a very direct route to the only high school we have, where most of our kids go to. So yes, that particular road is very much impacted, during certain periods of the day. Again, what we're doing with these technical studies is really just document the existing condition so we can help support our police department, when they get all these requests for, speed enforcement throughout the city. I would, along with you and many of our citizens, we really desire for more traffic calming, especially throughout our residential neighborhood. But we only have an opportunity to do that when we repave, resurface the road, and redelineate and resign those streets. Similar to what you are seeing right now on 3+ miles of West Capitol Avenue. Ryan Tevis was our project manager during construction. He's, done an excellent masterful job of that. So if you haven't looked at West Capitol Avenue lately, I encourage you to take a drive, daytime and nighttime, especially with all the, lighting additions further to the west. That is actually a classic example of how we can best, handle traffic calming. Is to do the improvements first, and then come back and resurvey to see if we are indeed successful. And in fact, we plan to do that in April, to gather data on West Capitol Avenue. And it would be a good measuring stick if we can come back to you and say, hey, after the improvements on West Capitol Avenue, we can lower the speed limit, from 35 to 30 and from 30 to 25. We can utilize certain tools in special zones, school zones, and in the central business district. where, where we can post those areas as 25 mile per hour. But then our police department needs to be ready though, because, with when you make that change and drivers are not ready, you're going to have a lot of violators.
Well, I appreciate that, Vin. I remember sitting down with you and you're talking to me about the speed limits and when you have residential areas with a high speed limit, like say those houses that face Jefferson, and they are a liability sometimes because cars might be going fast, and then you have a person that's trying to get into their house. They have to slow down so abruptly, which would cause a traffic hazard. And I appreciate, because I do remember Green Acres being right there. I actually toured the place when I had my son and needed a daycare. And there were a lot of cars going in and out of that property, but no longer. So, I mean, I wonder if the elimination of the one of the reasons behind that, the speed determination in that particular area, now that it's gone, does it necessarily need to be the same, maintain that? Because I mean, looking at the data here on these pages, it doesn't seem that, most of these are, turns, or like I said, the back-to-back traffic, and in one case, a motorcyclist doing an improper turn. If it showed that there were, the data showed that there were some other hazard that we should be concerned about, I certainly would flag that. So, that's all I have to say about that. Thank you very much for your responses.
Yeah, and what I would also promise to you is when we have an opportunity to resurface a road like Marshall Road, we will update the striping with bigger lines to make it more age friendly, and we would certainly re-sign it and similar to what we did along the residential areas of West Cowboy Avenue. We reduced the travel lanes for autos from 12 feet wide to 11 feet wide. And we gave more space to the bike lanes and incorporated bicycle buffers.
Yeah.
So just those little changes, believe it or not, actually affects the speed. So that's what we hope to do.
Right. I appreciate that. I mean, as we try to interconnect our city and get more people out, as we've been talking about in all the other, meetings and even tonight's, with a different topic, those are the things that we want. We want those people out there and we want them safe. So
right. And
thanks so much.
After we make that change, we can resurvey it again and we can post at a lower speed limit. That's terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you so much, Ben, with all that background. And
Mayor,
go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Ben, I've had a constituent of ours that has called me at least 3 or 4 different times. She lives over the road heading towards Woodland. It's Harbor, and I want to say it's Rice, but it's the one where you can take an alternate route to Woodland.
Yeah, North Harbor and then Old River Road, right?
Right. Anyway, I've had her contact me at least 4 times about the speed limit over there, because these trucks, they barrel through. I know we can't do anything about the noise, and she's often said, I wish you guys would put up a traffic light, which doesn't seem like it would be practical. However, I'm wondering, and I know this is about speed, but I'm wondering if, what do they call those undulations, the speed bumps?
Speed humps, yes.
Would something like that, even be part of this conversation, or is that for something else? Because I've seen it, and there are young children that live out in the area, elderly people. I've seen them walking there, because sidewalks are not really really great in that area. We definitely need to have some better sidewalks. I mean, they're basically almost just running into the road there. So her concern is someone's gonna, because of the way those trucks take off, someone's gonna get hurt. So I think, what is that, 35 there? It's supposed to be 35, but I know those. I've gone down that road myself, and I've seen it go really quick, like 50 sometimes.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, with some of the larger collector roads that are higher speed, it's very difficult for us to put in speed humps. We actually have speed humps in the Bright neighborhood over by Riverbank, and some of those residential streets where they're local streets. Some of these larger streets are there's significant impacts to our emergency access vehicles. If we install speed humps, and then along that particular route, because there's so much traffic that that bypasses the freeway to use the river road, that's probably not an ideal solution. Again, when we have an opportunity to resurface a road, we certainly look at different ways of doing that. Again, I keep pointing back to West Capitol Avenue. Before we had multiple lanes and just so much room for auto traffic, and the drivers, without even thinking, they're going much faster. But just by delineating the portion, especially to the west of Harbor Boulevard, just predominantly just 2 single lanes with a wide center turn lane, we're effectively using traffic to slow down each other and still provide the needed throughput. If we have an opportunity to do that, when we repave and resurface other streets, we're certainly incorporating that into our design criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other, if anybody would like to speak, just let me know. I don't see anybody. Okay, good. We'll bring it for public comment. Are there any requests to speak, Madam Clerk?
We have 2 hands up for public comment. Our first speaker is Ann Garrity.
Well, I stuck around after the last item, and this is an area that I have a lot of concern about because of my previous work with pedestrian and bicycle safety. So I just want to say I was impressed by all the presentation, which seemed to be mostly about increasing speed limits, but I was very glad to hear what the traffic person said about the opportunity to make changes in the future. Anyway, thank you. You can see I'm going to be active when I come to that.
Our next speaker is Maria Garcia. Ms. Garcia?
Ryan, can we close the screen share, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Maria Garcia? Mrs. Garcia, would you like to provide your comment? Ms. Garcia?
María. Apenas. Si puedes gritar.
Lo que a mí me preocupa es la calle para la River City, cuando cruzan la calle de donde está la Target y para cruzar hacia River City. Esta avenida también está muy, muy difícil para los niños. Están tratando de cruzar normalmente todos los días y me preocupan. No sé si podrían hacer como algún un bump o hacer algún puente o alguna cosa donde puedan los carros dejar pasar a todos estos niños a la escuela.
¿Es el Linden Road?
Sí.
Okay. Gracias.
We have no additional comments, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. All right, close the public comment, bring it back to council. Are there any other comments or questions? And I'll translate to Van what she said. She said along the high school on Linden Road, you know, there's been a lot of complaints and I've heard about it as well. In that area where the high school kids are traveling from the high school over to Target, sometimes cars don't slow down and it just puts the kids at risk. Sometimes there are cars randomly stopping to pick up kids after school as well. So it just turns into quite a chaotic situation around, you know, sometimes in the morning and after school. I don't know. There's probably more than one thing that could be done in that area just to improve safety. But I'm just passing that along for you to take a look at or take into consideration. And that was her comment. All right. With that, I will pull item 25, and I believe that this is the item that you have a conflict out due to your proximity, so you're unable to vote. And I'll take that item up first. I'll need a
motion. I'll make the
yes.
I'll move the recommended action.
Okay.
Second.
All right.
Madam Mayor, if I could just, if you could take a vote specifically on the Marshall Avenue segment first, and then Councilmember Early could participate in the rest of the act.
Correct. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, I think when the mayor was referencing item 25, it just for the everyone's sake in the public, it's listed in the staff report as the 25th item. So so the vote is just for Marshall Road, then you'll vote again for the whole thing, for the rest of that. Sorry.
Item 25, Marshall Road.
Sorry, under analysis, road segment name is listed as 25. That's what I knew.
No, I get it. You were right.
All right.
Okay. And I'm sorry, who seconded? Councilmember Alcala?
I think I did.
Morosco? Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't see who did it.
No, okay.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Alcala?
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco?
Aye.
Mayor Guerrero?
Aye. And how do you this is where I'll need our city attorney. How do you reference Councilmember Early's vote?
Councilmember Early recused herself on this step.
Thank you. Just want to make sure we got that for the record. And now Councilmember Early can come back in. I don't know where she went. Oh, there you are. Okay, so I'll accept a motion to approve the rest of the items.
So moved. I got you. I got you.
Councilmember Early went faster than Councilmember Ledesma, and Councilmember was seconded.
Shocking.
All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Early?
Aye.
Councilmember Alcala?
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco?
Aye.
Mayor Guerrero?
Aye. And I just want to, this is all approved. I want to thank Ryan and Ben and Ravi for all your background information. This is very helpful, and look forward to, Ben, further discussion on the calming ideas and any other ideas you have. I appreciate, the community will hit you up as well. So I look forward to continuing to chat with you about that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members.
Thank you, Ryan. And appreciate your work on West Capitol Avenue. Great job. Huge project.
Yeah.
So you got to put your name, a little plaque out there. Ryan did it. All right. And let's see. So we got that one approved. Next is item 24, council communications from our assignments. And this used to be in the beginning. Now we have it in the end. Who wants to go first? Councilmember Orozco, Mayor Pro Tem Orozco.
Oh, you know what? I didn't. Fine. I'll be quick. The Sacramento County Regional Sanitation Board met. What day was that? maybe last week, February 23rd. And really quickly, we adopted the amendments to the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District Consolidated Ordinance, as well as received a Harvest Water Program quarterly report from October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021. We have other matters of business, but those are the two highlights. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other reports from council assignments? No? Oh, these, okay, quiet month. Okay, so I have a few. So on February 7th, we had a city school 2x2, and it was a brief meeting. We did cover the school's COVID-19 testing updates on what was happening there. I think they were evaluating a transition to maybe Healthy Davis Together, but I'm not sure if that's happened yet. I know that they had some thoughts and feedback around that, and so they were just exploring that. This is a while ago now. So the next update was an update to the 2x2, the school board members on the home run internship and scholarship program, just making sure they're aware of the progress that is being made with that program, and just encouraging participation. And there is now a release of that on our social media, just to get youth to be interested in getting involved. And then the school district completed their redistricting process, and it's online. You can see the map on their websites. On February 17th, SACOG board met. We covered the following pertinent items, which is of interest to us. We approved the Transportation Development Act claims for the city of West Sacramento, which it was a fiscal year 2021-22 amended for $4.4 million. This covers the YOLA bus fixed route and via on-demand transit planning and operations. And the next thing we did was do a workshop on opportunities for state and federal transportation funding, which was really helpful. I was able to touch base with our city staff on taking a look at how we can apply for funding in a way that is streamlined. And I received some, insight on who we need to follow up with. So we're going to be following up with, reapplying for some state funding that is coming around, that's in the state budget. And on February 24th, I also participated in the SACOG Race, Equity, and Inclusion work group. We do have our mission statement, and the next step is going to be developing outcomes from that mission statement. So we're working in developing this in 2022. We have a schedule that has been approved, and then so we're going to operationalize the commitments in the racial equity statement. We're going to engage, empower, implement, and these opportunities out in the community. And just to speaking to Councilmember Early's concerns around gentrification, those are some of the things that are being taken into consideration. Establishing policies, and those policies is what guides. I think regionally, love to have just West Sacramento be the front runner, but I think as we look at other regions who are struggling with the same thing, taking a look at it from a regional perspective. And we also received a case study presentation on the Metropolitan Transportation Commission's community-based transportation plan program. It gave you a little insight on how they did a really great job in doing outreach, so that any investments in transportation was inclusive, and making sure that people of all incomes are being able to access the mobility options that are available. I am also involved in the bike sharing. This other committee that SACOG has, and we're doing the same thing in there. That met sometime in the last month. I can't remember the date on that one, sorry. But that's the same thing where we are discussing, in the bike sharing, the bike and scooter sharing program on a regional basis. We're trying to find a way so that it's, there is more equity in accessing those modes of transportation. So that concludes my update. Next is item 25, and we have an appointment for Staff to represent the city at the Yolo County Waste Advisory Committee. You received an email, I think, February 25th from our city clerk to have Environmental Services and Sustainability Manager Tracy Galarte. And she is new. So I'd first like to welcome her to our West Sacramento team. I believe she comes from Elk Grove. So it's really exciting to have somebody there. But also appoint her to fill the role that she is now filling. And with that, I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we got Norma and Chris. Okay, I'll get Norma. All right, so Councilmember Early moved, Councilmember Alcala second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Early.
Aye.
Councilmember Alcala.
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco.
Aye.
Mayor Guerrero.
Aye. All right, this item is approved. Next, we have our city council calendar.
Good evening, no report tonight.
All right. Thank you. And our city manager report.
No report, but I'll just chime in on the last item that you just approved. I just want to clarify that the position on staff that just got appointed has historically filled that role. So it was Paulina Benner. Most of you know her. She recently retired. So Tracy is replacing her on staff and taking over that role. So, but no other report. Thanks.
All right, thank you. City attorney report.
Nothing to report tonight.
All right, we have future agenda item requests by council, which are attached. I don't know if you all had a chance to review them. And are there any questions? Or I do have a question. I did attach, I thought a Women's History Month proclamation. Don't see a sample here attached, but I'll send it over again. I wish you had a chance to take a look at it. But I'll send it again in case it was included with the Cesar Chavez Day proclamation. It was included in that email that I sent. So that one's here, but not the Women's History Month for you to review. And we do have additional one. We have the American Red Cross and month. Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem Orozco. And we, I think, are going to be taking up those in our next meeting. And go ahead.
Yeah, I believe they all were requested for the March 16th meeting. So the process, if you recall, is you would all take a quick vote to approve those for the next agenda if there's consensus. And I just want to note that I'm going to be sending out some revised guidance on this overall process later this week, just to try to streamline it a little bit. So look for that in your email, probably on Friday. So, but these would all be scheduled for March 16th, I believe. Okay,
thank you. And I think if we can have, because there are two requests, could we have get two of them prepared? Because I do have recipients for the Women's History Month. I think Councilmember Early has recipients for hers as well.
Oh, you mean 2 copies of the resolution?
Yeah, is that possible? I think Councilmember Early has, I think, a little ceremony or something that she's planning for hers, and I do too as well, because I think we both. I didn't know she submitted one, but since we both have a request in.
Well, I think staff's generally how we handle these is it's a general resolution for recognizing in this case, a month. We would prepare the resolution, and then we can provide as many copies as are needed for groups that may want a copy of it, if that's what you're asking.
Yes, so it's not signed by the time we can't have one signed and prepared to give it to somebody by the meeting.
Let's follow up on that. I don't see any reason why we couldn't. If we're talking about are we talking about an in-person ceremony?
Well, Councilmember Early, I think you had some ideas of how you were going to do this, right? You had a Girl Scout troop that was combined and wanted to do something. Right?
Yeah. So it's going to be via Zoom, but maybe we can get them ahead of time, right? So that would be great if there's an opportunity for that. So it's still going to be remote, but it's actually a Boy Scout troop that has been integrated, which feels very, very appropriate for Women's History Month. It's been integrated with Girl Scouts. It's one of the first in the region. and the troop leader had reached out a couple of months ago. And so was hoping that the Girl Scouts, I think it's two, scouts, we'll say scouts, gender neutral, could maybe say something or anything that we think would be appropriate. I don't want to obviously.
Okay.
Yeah, and just this is a reminder of the process. The way we've been doing these during the COVID era has been we put the items on consent, and they're welcome to be pulled by any council member or by a member of the public for comment. So if you have people that are attending the meeting in recognition of any of those resolutions that we'd be placing on the agenda, you just direct them to speak during those items. Whether I would assume they'll be pulled by council members. So in terms of getting copies of the resolutions once they're approved by council and signed, we can get as many as needed to people that would like one. But yeah, if it's an in-person ceremony, that's something different. We'd have to make separate arrangements for that.
Aaron, for our next meeting, it sounds like there might be two resolutions, just to make sure our two proclamations we have
There's
Cesar
three,
Chavez
actually.
and three. Okay, so maybe Martha, you and I could coordinate on, because if you have a group, is your group also dealing with Women's History Month, or are they dealing with?
Well,
Okay,
there's Cesar Chavez, Women's History, and then American Red Cross, and then Mayor Pro Tem Orozco. I don't know if you have anybody speaking on that.
I will find out.
Sure. What I recommend on each of these, if you go ahead and take the action tonight to put them on the agenda, we can do what we normally do and work with you to figure out who's going to be there, how many copies, all that kind of stuff. So, and also it'll help to see the revised guidance that I'm going to send out, trying to make this easier on everyone going forward. So, like I said, look for that.
That would be great. Yeah. Okay. Are all good now? Good. All right. Thanks. Next is adjourning, and I'd like to adjourn in the memory of Joyce Rayleigh Teal, who recently passed away. She's just an icon here of West Sacramento, with establishing the Rayleigh's headquarters, in our city, and just a major contributor in our region, with our minor league baseball team, and just her contributions, as far as philanthropic contributions to our city has been significant. So just establishing the foundation of who we are in our city, and I just want to be able to adjourn.
Okay, I'll move the recommended action in her memory.
Yeah. Second.
Thank you, President and Mayor Pro Tem Orozco. Second, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Early.
Aye.
Councilmember Alcala.
Aye.
Councilmember Ledesma.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Orozco.
Aye.
Mayor Guerrero.
Aye. All right, everybody, have a good night.
Thank you.